the water of the divine pool had run out. Long Chen had sucked 2 of the divine spring's water dry. Old man, the 7th both hesitated. The old man sank into thought for a moment before saying, "Open the final divine spring." The 7th boss hastily cried out, "Old man, if the final divine spring is sucked dry, then our heaven-splitting battle sect will end with this generation." The heaven-splitting battle sect only had 3 divine springs. At this time, there was no way for the 3 divine springs to produce new spring water. What they were using was their reserves saved from their past glory. If this final bit was used up, the heaven-splitting battle sect's inheritance would end here. Without the tempering of the divine pool, the disciples would be unable to strengthen their physical bodies, and the 4th form of split the heavens would be their limit. This was a huge matter of grave importance to the heaven-splitting battle sect. Open it. If the heavens really want my heaven-splitting battle sect to die, we don't have the power to stop it. There's no difference between dying sooner or later, sighed the old man. The 7th boss also sighed. He pressed his hand against another stone pillar. The pool shook slightly as another divine spring was opened, and gushing water poured in. This was the final divine spring. Once it was used, the heaven-splitting battle sect would have no more divine springs for future generations. The divine spring quickly filled up the entire pool. Long Chen's scales rapidly absorbed the energy. This final divine spring contained the most energy. It surpassed the sum of the previous 2 divine springs. The 7th boss was controlling things so that it didn't overflow. But he quickly realized that after the water reached a certain level, it stopped rising. That meant all its reserves had been used up. That made a sad light appear in his eyes. No matter how magnanimous a person was, there was no way they could treat this as nothing. After all, this would decide the future rise or decline of the heaven-splitting battle sect. On his own, Long Chen had absorbed almost the whole stock for the heaven-splitting battle sect's next 1,000 years. That was absolutely shocking. Long Chen's body was like a bottomless pit that wouldn't fill up no matter what. Long Chen's potential is unimaginable. Any other disciple would have long since exploded upon absorbing this much energy. Furthermore, the divine spring's energy only supposed to strengthen the physical body and one's potential. It's basically unrelated to cultivation base. But Long Chen absorbed so much energy that he broke through consecutively. This is already abnormal. This child isn't ordinary, so let him do as he pleases. Even if it causes the heaven-splitting battle sect to decline, we have to act in accordance with our original hearts. Being afraid of the wolf in front and afraid of the tiger behind isn't the style of our heaven-splitting battle sect, said the old man. Yes. The 7th boss's heart shook. He nodded. At this time, the water reached rock bottom. Long Chen's scales began to shine, and a powerful pressure erupted. "He's actually advancing again?" cried the 7th boss. Long Chen slowly opened his eyes. His energy formed a pillar of light that soared into the sky. Heaven and earth trembled intensely. Suddenly, a crack appeared on the border of the divine pool, causing the 7th boss's expression to completely change. "Little bastard, don't advance in the divine pool. Scram up to the sky." Long Chen was unable to control himself. He had reached the limit of how far he could possibly break through, making it so his energy was not completely within his control. A vast energy was about to explode out of him. The continuous advancements caused his 108,000 immortal platforms to store up a ridiculous amount of energy. Long Chen hastily stamped on the ground and shot into the air. Boom! The rocks at the bottom of the divine pool blew into the air, causing the 7th boss to turn green. He hastily checked the core and found that it hadn't been destroyed, allowing him to sigh with relief. "If he broke it, I'd beat him until he pissed out everything he took," muttered the 7th boss as he closed the divine pool. He looked up at Long Chen. Long Chen was standing in the air, his entire face red and his body inflating. He looked like a prawn being boiled. "Are you constipated?" The 7th boss had only just shouted when he was sent flying by a palm. The old man's furious roar rang out. "Can you not be so embarrassing?" He is using his erupting spiritual yuan to once more widen his meridians. Long Chen truly was trying to use this torrent of energy to expand his meridians. He was not a disciple of the heaven-splitting battle sect, and he didn't cultivate the battle god's sacred canon. Normally, the heaven-splitting battle sect's disciples would use the heaven-earth divine pool's blessing to stimulate their dantians into widening their meridians to better fit their new bodies. But Long Chen cultivated the 9-star hegemon body art. His dantian was empty, and so he was unable to use it to widen his meridians. With his cultivation experience, he knew that if he wanted to adapt to his new body and new spiritual yuan, he had to widen his meridians. Otherwise, no matter how much energy he possessed, if the channels weren't wide enough, he would be unable to use it. Having power but not being able to use it was useless. He was using his own method to widen his meridians through the power of his continuous breakthroughs. Rumbling rang out from Long Chen's body. Each rumble represented his meridians had widened. This kind of suicidal method shocked the 7th boss. This was too crazy. Even the heaven-splitting battle sect's disciples with their powerful physical bodies wouldn't dare to do such a thing. Meridians could not be treated so crazily. Their flexibility was limited, and if pushed past their limit, they would easily explode. Broken meridians were extremely troublesome to heal. Too crazy. The 7th elder shook his head. In just a few breaths' time, Long Chen had widened his meridians 7 times, and he was still continuing. In truth, there was no way this was a real method of widening one's meridians. Long Chen's meridians were covered in cracks right now and about to break. But after widening, Long Chen would use the primal chaos space's energy to heal them and then once more widen them. This kind of opportunity wouldn't come again just because he wished it. He had to do his best to widen his meridians as much as possible before his breakthrough came to an end. His 108,000 immortal platforms had a huge amount of energy now, but without the strong meridians, he couldn't use that energy. It was like he owned a huge lake, but could only send out water through little streams. What he needed to do was turn those streams into mighty rivers. That was the only way for him to match the power of his body. His meridians widened, cracked, and then healed over and over. Long Chen suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood. The energy in his body was too berserk, and he was doing his best to suppress it to prevent his breakthrough from ending. Now that energy was starting to cause a backlash. This energy was too terrifying. Long Chen continuously coughed up blood, but he ignored it, doing his best to widen his meridians. After going through the nourishment of the heaven-earth divine pool, even Long Chen was unable to tell just how terrifying his new body was. Right now, his body was still highly malleable. But once he was past this point, his meridians would become set in size once more and highly difficult to widen. Continuous explosions came from Long Chen's body, and in the end, his skin broke apart and blood poured out of him, dyeing him red. The 7th boss's heart pounded. This was too ruthless. The heaven-splitting battle sect's disciples didn't need to suffer one bit through this tempering, but Long Chen was torturing himself. Furthermore, this was incredibly dangerous. The slightest mistake would cause either his meridians to erupt, or his body to explode from holding back all this energy. Despite being a terrifying figure in his own right, the 7th boss couldn't help being worried. Long Chen was dancing on the tip of a blade. But Long Chen had no choice but to dance, because he didn't cultivate the battle god's sacred canon. Old man, did we make a mistake? Should we have let him cultivate the battle god's sacred canon before going through this baptism? The 7th boss sent a message to the old man upon seeing Long Chen covered in blood. Do you think I'm as brainless as you? Long Chen's cultivation technique is far more terrifying than the battle god's sacred canon, or how do you think he manages to use split the heavens? Furthermore, when he fought Chang Hao, his dantian was clearly completely still. Were you too blind to see it? He doesn't even possess a dantian, so how could he cultivate the battle god's sacred canon? When will you start paying attention to details? Scolded the old man. Suddenly, Long Chen's skin exploded from his body, covering him in bloody mist. It was an extremely alarming sight, but Long Chen was still clenching his teeth and bearing with it. Does this little brat not want his life anymore? The 7th boss's scalp turned numb. Long Chen was now on the brink of collapse. If he continued, there would truly be a danger of dying. This child's Tao heart is extremely firm. His path from the eastern wasteland was filled with trials and dangers, slaughter and bones. He fought his way through this path with his life on the line, because he had no other choice but to do so to obtain the things that others obtain easily. My heaven-splitting battle-sex disciples are clearly blessed in comparison, sighed the old man. Old man, this little fellow's too ruthless. If he explodes, he'll really die since he hasn't condensed a yuan spirit. No one would be able to save him, said the seventh boss worriedly. Don't worry about it. This child has experienced so many battles. His sense of danger is sharp. He should know when he has to stop. Although that sounded reasonable, right now, Long Chen had turned into a figure of blood. Each time his body rumbled, more blood mist would fill the air. It was far too frightening. Fuck, how dare he make me so worried? Once he's done, I'll properly beat him. The seventh boss clenched his teeth and his fists. Each time he saw blood mist explode from Long Chen's body, he was worried Long Chen would die. Long Chen expanded his meridians a total of 36 times before he finally wasn't able to bear it. If he continued holding back his breakthrough, he would definitely die. Gulping down a mouthful of the divine life elixir, his injuries healed, and at the same time, that sealed energy within his body was completely released. Boom! A terrifying aura erupted, shaking the 9 heavens. The powerful pressure of the 9th heaven stage of foundation forging erupted, causing the heavens to shake. Seeing Long Chen advance properly, the 7th boss finally sighed with relief, a weight falling from his shoulders. This method of Long Chen's had been too dangerous. However, as Long Chen's aura continued to rise, the pressure grew stronger until the 7th boss began to frown. 9 is the limit, the peak. But his aura. The 7th boss looked at Long Chen suspiciously. According to reason, once a person reached the 9th heaven stage of foundation forging, their aura should become extremely steady and stable. It wouldn't be as turbulent as Long Chen's. For normal people in the 1st heaven stage, they would condense 9 original runes and form a foundation. In the 2nd heaven stage, they would condense 8 runes into a slightly smaller foundation and solidly established it on the 1st foundation. The 3rd heaven stage condensed 7 runes, the 4th heaven stage 6 runes. Then the 9th heaven stage would condense 1 supreme rune into the peak. This final rune would link up with the foundation of the 9 original runes at the bottom to form an extremely stable structure. That was called the immortal platform. Foundation forging was the process of creating this immortal platform. The final rune sealed the whole platform, so once it was condensed, the immortal platform would be complete, and a person's aura would naturally stabilize. But Long Chen had clearly reached the 9th heaven stage, yet his aura was fluctuating fiercely. It didn't show any sign of that stabilization. Suddenly, the sky shook as Long Chen finished his breakthrough. He looked at his own hands with disbelief. This power. Long Chen felt like he had completely transformed. His body was brimming with power. Even without using any spiritual yuan, he felt like he could destroy mountains with just a punch. Long Chen beat his own chest with his fists, causing thunderous sounds to shake the air. This feeling told Long Chen that he wasn't dreaming. He had advanced from the 5th heaven stage all the way to the 9th heaven stage. And through the divine pool, his physical body had been strengthened as well. His body had reached an unprecedented strength, and despite the increase in his cultivation base, he didn't feel the slightest bit like his cultivation base was out of his control. In other words, with his current physical body, he was more than capable of using the power of his powerful cultivation base. The 108,000 immortal platforms were full of energy, but Long Chen found that the Feng Fu, Alioth, Life Fate, and Enlightenment Palace stars had all changed slightly. And yet he was unable to clearly say what the difference was. The only major difference was that 4 whirlpools had appeared in his 4 chi seas, causing their energy to form an infinite cycle with his 108,000 immortal platforms. Other people's immortal platforms gradually shrank to the top, making them wider at the bottom than the top. But Long Chen's immortal platforms were cylindrical. Each of them contained immense power. Each one of them was like a volcano that Long Chen could cause to erupt with a thought. Long Chen was beating his own chest when suddenly a fist landed on his body, causing his organs to flip inside him. He shot out like a shooting star. He blew apart a stone pavilion in the distance and continued tumbling back before stabilizing himself. Not bad, not bad. This fist was able to break your bones before, but now you don't even cough up blood. The seventh boss stood in the air, nodding in praise. This punch had come from him. Long Chen's physical body had become so strong that even he was shocked. He had used the same power in this punch as when he had first shattered every bone in Long Chen's body. Even though Long Chen hadn't been on guard at all, he only suffered a completely insignificant injury. Long Chen was also shocked at the seventh boss's power. Although his aura clearly showed that his cultivation base was only at the soul transformation, his actual power was terrifying. Those ancient races' soul transformation experts weren't even on the same level when compared with the seventh boss. They weren't even fit to carry his shoes. Long Chen looked at the heaven-earth divine pool and suddenly saw that it was empty. His heart shook, and he was just about to speak when the seventh boss grabbed him. The two of them vanished. When they reappeared, they were at the peak of a mountain. Terrifying wind blades ruthlessly cut at Long Chen's body. Even with his new power, Long Chen felt pain from these wind blades. Tiny cuts appeared all over his body. But he was able to endure it. At the peak of the mountain, inside of a wooden room, there was an elder sitting lotus-style. His white hair fell naturally, and his sword-like eyebrows pointed toward the sky. His eyes were electric, and although he was simply sitting there, Long Chen felt like a god was staring at him. His heart pounded. This was a terrifying existence. Behind the elder were 6 large men with broadswords on their backs. All of them had bare arms and bulging muscles. It was like they were about to explode. These men looked to be in their 40s or 50s. They were all square-jawed, direct men. The seventh boss now lined up amongst them. Long Chen suddenly realized that this seventh boss was called so because he was the seventh in terms of seniority here. None of them spoke. They simply stared at Long Chen, their gazes like blades. It was like they wanted to see through him. In front of the staring of this many terrifying experts, Long Chen's scalp turned numb. The pressure was great. But Long Chen couldn't act like a coward. He stared back at them stubbornly. Staring 1 against 8 put him at a disadvantage, but he was still able to do it. He supposed that it counted as holding his own, 1 against 8. Little bastard, eat my fist. Suddenly, the large man standing on the very left sent out a punch at Long Chen. Long Chen was shocked. The power behind this fist made his hair stand on end. He definitely couldn't take it. He tried to dodge. As this fist didn't contain any locking power, he could move. But even once he was a dozen meters away, for some reason, the fist was still in front of him. It was like his dodging was nothing more than a misperception. The fist was actually impossible to dodge. Boom. Long Chen flew back, pain racking his body. He felt like his body was about to collapse. He was shocked and infuriated. These fellows were truly uncivilized. This fist is your punishment for not returning home even after arriving in the Central Plains for so long. You didn't treat the heaven-splitting battle sect as your home, said that person furiously. He then once more smashed out a fist. Long Chen was just about to defend, but while that punch looked slow, it somehow struck him before he could do anything, smashing into his chest. He once more vomited blood and flew back. This fist is to punish you for running into a crisis and not asking your family for help. You don't view us as your family. That man's whole face darkened, showing how angry he was. These 2 punches didn't cause Long Chen to feel any resentment. Instead, he sniffed emotionally. He hadn't thought that the heaven-splitting battle sect which he had yet to properly greet would treat him like this. This third fist. Wait, if you hit me again, you'll regret it. Long Chen suddenly took out a foot-tall wine jug. You think an insignificant jug of wine can threaten me? Wait, could it be that this wine comes from the Wine God Palace? The Wine God Palace's wine was famous within the Central Plains. But the Wine God Palace didn't sell it, and if you wanted to drink it, you had to receive the approval of the Wine God Palace. Experts longing for fine wine viewed it as extraordinarily precious. When they drank it, they would savor every drop. The heaven-splitting battle sect had no relationship with the wine god palace, while their people were all explosive and violent, making it so there was no way they would lower themselves to beg for wine. That was why they had long since heard of the wine god palace's wine but had yet to try any. Gulp. An audible gulp rang out in the air. Long Chen was truly evil. He used spiritual yuan to protect the jug from the wind blades, but he intentionally allowed a single wind blade to cut through the top, unleashing a burst of fragrance. All these peak experts had sharp senses, and they were also people who loved wine. They involuntarily swallowed their saliva. "Humph, you want to buy me with a single jug of wine? You're looking down on me. It would take at least 2 jars. That person stuck out 2 fingers. After saying that, this person was sent flying by a kick. It was done by the old man. The person he kicked was the boss of the 7 people, and he also had an even more domineering name, Head Boss. After kicking him to the side, the old man looked at Long Chen. "Child, you must remember that our heaven-splitting battle sect is very simple. Since we've permitted you to use Split the Heavens, we view you as family. But you don't view us as family back, which is hurtful. You're still young, so I can forgive this mistake once. But just once. I won't allow it a second time." The old man's eyes shone with a warning light. Long Chen realized many things from that look. Ashamed, he said, "Junior knows his wrongs." Long Chen rarely admitted his mistakes, but this time was different. After admitting it, he felt more at peace and emotional. He now fully understood what kind of people the heaven-splitting battle sect's men were. They were truly odd people, but this kind of emotion was very sincere. Long Chen had struggled in the Xiantian Dao sect for a long time before fully trusting Li Tianxian. But in the heaven-splitting battle sect, he instantly felt absolute trust. That was what made him the most emotional. That person you killed in the Eastern Wasteland was nothing more than a traitor with an impure heart. He was a disgrace to our heaven-splitting battle sect. However, he was nothing more than an accident. Our inner sect disciples are all pure-hearted children. They will be your brothers in the future, while we are your elders. No matter what kind of trouble you cause outside, as long as you stand on the side of reason, then even if the heavens collapse, I will hold them up for you. But if you encounter danger and don't ask for help from your family, that's innately a lack of trust. If such a thing happens again, I will no longer acknowledge you as a disciple," warned the old man gravely. "Old man, that's about enough. Long Chen has already admitted his wrongs, so why keep nagging him? Okay. This wine jug is too heavy, so let head boss carry it for you. I wouldn't want your hand to get tired." The head boss had finished scolding Long Chen and now reached out for Long Chen's wine jug. But he had only started reaching out when the old man sent him flying with a slap. He furiously cursed, "You damn shameless bastard. How am I shameless? As the head boss, am I supposed to refuse when a child shows me his filial respect by giving me a gift?" quibbled the head boss. Despite being blown back, he still held on tightly to the wine jug. "How did it become showing filial respect for you? I was the one who ran over to the Grand Xia to protect him in secret. If he's showing filial respect for anyone, it should be for me," declared the 7th boss. Long Chen was surprised to hear that. "7th boss, you went over to the Grand Xia? Little brat, considering how much trouble you caused, how could we be at ease knowing you were facing the ancient races alone?" snorted the 7th boss. Then 7th boss, Tu Qinsheng, "He's fine, right?" asked Long Chen. He truly was a bit worried about him. After all, he was only at the soul transformation realm. What a worrywart. That Tu Qinsheng once exchanged blows with me. Do you think he'd have any trouble against those ancient race idiots? Out of those 3 life-star idiots, 1 was killed, 1 had his physical body destroyed, and the last 1 fled while protecting the other's yuan spirit, said the 7th boss. Long Chen was shocked. Tu Qinsheng was far stronger than he had imagined. Even 1 against 3, he had fought across realms and killed 1 of them. You don't need to be shocked. 1800 years ago, I encountered that fellow and we fought an intense battle. That battle lasted a day and night, but in the end, both of us got too hungry to keep fighting, so instead of wasting more energy, we drank wine together. In truth, Tu Qianshang is his generation's genius and also a hot-blooded man. But because of his little brother's death, he ended up joining the Wine God Palace. If he could let go of his resentment from back then, he would have long since advanced to the Life Star realm. Due to you and all the built-up resentment over the years, he immediately went all out at the start. If the ancient races weren't such cowards, they'd have all died to his blade. Furthermore, due to getting to vent his resentment, that fellow will very likely be able to use this opportunity to advance to the Life Star realm. The seventh boss was full of praise for Tu Qianshang. Learning that Tu Qianshang was fine put Long Chen at ease. He also couldn't help but find it somewhat funny. Tu Qianshang's character was truly to the heaven-splitting battle sex taste. Old man, this little one didn't have the chance to gather any big gifts this time. But I specifically brought this particular jug of wine for you. This wine is personally made by the Wine God Palace's high priest. Long Chen took out another jug. This was one of the 2 jugs of peerless wine the high priest had given him. For Long Chen to drink this kind of wine was purely a waste. When he had obtained them, he had first thought to give one to Li Tianxian and one to the heaven-splitting battle sect. The Wine God Palace's high priest? This time, even the old man stood up. The 7 bosses' eyes almost popped out of their sockets as they stared intently at the jug of wine. The old man carefully opened the seal on the jug, and a dense fragrance of wine poured out, one that caused all their minds to relax. What a fine wine! The 7 bosses all exclaimed in praise. They were all soul transformation experts who had lived for a long time and seen much. But they had never seen such a fine wine. With just a look, with just a sniff, they sensed the aura of the heavenly Daos, and even a strange change occurred with their spiritual yuan. The high priest of the Wine God Palace? Good brat, you actually received his wine? Hee, you have some skill, praised the old man. The high priest was a supreme existence, someone even Life Star experts wouldn't necessarily be qualified to meet. For Long Chen to have received his wine was an enormous honor. Old man, what do you think you're doing? Why did you take the wine? In any case, you're still going to give us a taste, right? Seeing the old man take the wine with seemingly no intent to share it with them, the others all panicked. This was the wine of the high priest. Even if it was just 1 drop, they would at least be able to brag about it in the future. This is something Long Chen is gifting me as part of his filial duties. Does it have anything to do with you? Furthermore, with your cultivation bases, drinking this kind of wine is a waste of an absolute treasure. The old man shook his head, refusing to give them even 1 drop. Fuck. Brothers, charge. The head boss roared furiously, and what made Long Chen's eyes almost pop out was that the others also charged at the old man at the same time, clearly trying to take the wine back. A few brats think they can rebel? Could it be that you've called me old man for so long that you actually think I'm old? Scram. The old man roared thunderously, and a terrifying chi wave instantly exploded, blowing back the 7 of them and causing them to vomit blood. What the fuck? Long Chen suddenly cursed and took out the black pot, hiding his body behind it. Bang! Long Chen was also struck by the chi wave and shot out like a shooting star. He vomited blood, feeling like his bones had been broken as he crashed into a distant mountain. This huge mountain was blown to bits by Long Chen, and when he crawled out from the wreckage, he once more vomited a mouthful of blood. These damn madmen. Long Chen was speechless. He hastily fled to a distant mountain peak. Where he had just been, there were the fierce rumblings of an intense battle between powerful experts. Watching such a thing would be extremely beneficial to him. But when he reached the peak of the mountain, he saw the battle had already ended. The old man was holding a pitch-black walking cane. The other 7 were lying on the ground in pain. All of them were beaten black and blue. The places they were injured had turned as black as the old man's cane. Looking from the black cane to their miserable plight, Long Chen realized that provoking the old man in a fit of passion came with a price. "Do you submit?" shouted the old man. "I submit." Long Chen jumped and hastily expressed his attitude. This old man's temper was truly violent. The old man glared at him and said, "I wasn't talking to you. I was asking these 7 little brats." The seventh boss crawled up and courageously declared, "Just wait, one day I will definitely make you kneel in front of me." The seventh boss was once more sent flying by the cane, and Long Chen even heard the sound of bones breaking. He shivered. This was too ruthless. The seventh boss's terrifying body was still injured so heavily by a whack of a cane. If it had been him instead, he'd probably have exploded. "If you don't submit, you can come at me again," declared the old man. But now, the 7 of them were covered in black spots and looked incredibly miserable. They had long since lost their previous air of experts. They could recover their spiritual yuan, but the old man's cane was strange. They were unable to expel the black color that seeped into their skin in a short time. This was the price of challenging the sect master's prestige. "Long Chen, I heard your guts are big. Do you want to try it as well?" The old man turned to Long Chen. "Me? Maybe not today. I know how to respect seniority." Long Chen hastily shook his head. Was he joking? Although his guts weren't small, he wasn't an idiot. He wouldn't send himself over just to be beaten. Head boss, don't worry. I still have a bit more wine for us to drink. Can you help me out?" In order to alleviate the awkward tension in the air, Long Chen took out a large jug of wine. The wind was too strong on the peak of this mountain, making it so Long Chen couldn't completely block it. He could only ask for help. Hearing that there was still wine for him to drink, the head boss immediately recovered and summoned a barrier that protected Long Chen. Long Chen took out a stone table and some wine bowls. He saw that the 7 bosses seemed very depressed after being beaten. "Brat, you don't need to worry about sucking up to them. Even once they drink your wine, they'll still beat you when you deserve it. They won't give you any face just because of this wine," warned the old man. "That's right. Little brat, we won't neglect our teaching and discipline because of this wine. Of course, we'll still give you beatings when we need to," said the head boss, as if that was as it should be. "Hee, no problem. A family doesn't need to care about sucking up. Here, have a taste of this fiery wine." Long Chen switched out the wine jars once he heard the head boss's words. He poured all of them a bowl of this new wine. Long Chen felt that these people were truly interesting. This kind of character was truly unique. Long Chen had already drunk 2 Qianshang's fiery wines several times before. Now he was able to suppress the impact. But the head boss, second boss, third boss, fourth boss, and 7th boss had never had it. At first, they hadn't sensed anything because of their powerful cultivation bases. But they quickly sensed their blood starting to heat up. Their courage grew, and exchanging a glance, they suddenly charged at the old man all at once. "Bye!" Long Chen scuttled away, putting away the table and the wine. He hastily flew out a mile when he was sent flying by a terrifying chi wave. It was like a mountain had crashed into him, and he almost vomited blood. The fight had already begun. Tumbling into the distance, Long Chen's head was rattling as he tried to stabilize himself. When he managed to look back over, he saw the 7 bosses charging at the old man. The old man waved his cane, and black images filled the air, almost as if darkness was enveloping the world. Bang, 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 bang. "Aya! Fuck!" Screaming and cursing rang out. When those black images disappeared, they revealed the old man standing in the air, with the 7 bosses lying on the ground like dead dogs. The 4th boss had suffered the most, with his body stuck in the rock and only his legs sticking out. Long Chen was struck dumb. The old man was truly powerful. Even 1 against 7, it was like he was beating children. "Old man, you're so powerful and domineering." Long Chen hastily rushed over to the old man's side and said some boot-licking words, looking as if he was one family with him. He was confident the old man was the one with absolute authority in the heaven-splitting battle sect. Going with him was definitely the way of the king. "Long Chen, you little bastard, you dare to con me?" The head boss roared and reached toward him. He knew the 7 of them had been conned. With the head boss's hand reaching toward him, Long Chen snickered mischievously and hid behind the old man. As expected, his gift of filial respect hadn't been for nothing. The old man waved his cane, blowing away the head boss. "Due to your own lack of ability, You take your anger out on a child? Can you feel the slightest bit of shame? Snorted the old man. Good brat, you have some guts to even scheme against us. Just wait, don't land in our hands. Threatened the other bosses. All right, then you can go and I'll just drink alone with the old man. It just so happens that I have a few more fine wines I wanted to use to offer my respects. Long Chen took out several wine jugs, each one of them different. He intentionally opened them slightly to allow their fragrance to wash out. Even ordinary people would begin to salivate upon smelling this wine, let alone the heaven-splitting battle-sex people who loved wine. It possessed a fatal attraction for them. Cough, what would be the point of just the two of you drinking by yourselves? Don't worry, we'll accompany you. The head boss's fury instantly vanished in front of this fine wine. If the old man wasn't present, he'd have probably already snatched them away. But he now thickened his skin to stick around. Hee, just now I was just testing the old man's unrivaled divine power. It's not like losing to the old man is embarrassing. In this world, just how many people are able to challenge him? Comforted Long Chen as he poured the wine. He guessed the 7 of them hadn't been beaten like this in a long time, which had caused them to be irritated. For them to have been beaten in front of a junior was truly a bit embarrassing. He hastily gave them a way out of that awkwardness. That made them much more comfortable, but when they received Long Chen's wine, they were now much more cautious. The memory of Tu Qianshang's wine was still burned in their minds, and they drank this wine slowly. It was because of Tu Qianshang's wine that they had overflowed with a desire to fight, and adding on their desire to beat the old man, they had instantly attacked, which had resulted in a miserable defeat. But these wines Long Chen had brought out were basically unrelated to cultivation, and were only used for the taste. It made them all exclaim in admiration. Fortunately, the bosses knew that the Wine God Palace's wine was exceptionally precious and couldn't be consumed willy-nilly. They all drank it slowly, savoring it. After a few jugs of wine had entered their bellies, they had all relaxed and forgotten about their previous depression. Their mood continued to rise. Long Chen, you're not bad. I look favorably upon you, praised the head boss, patting him on the shoulder. Long Chen was speechless. Why did this sound so off? He laughed and poured more wine for him, saying, Head boss, I suppose you stand at the top of the 7 bosses. But of course, my title of head boss was won through my own fists. For 300 years, no one has been able to shake my position, he bragged. The second boss snorted but didn't say anything. It was immediately clear to Long Chen that the ranking of the 7 bosses wasn't based on seniority, but based on whose fist was stronger. Then head boss, with your qualifications, you must be the strongest other than the old man. But why do I always hear people cursing you? Asked Long Chen. Cursing me? Tell me who. I'll smash their heads. But as he said this, he looked questioningly at the old man, clearly lacking confidence. What are you looking at me for? When do I ever curse you? Isn't beating you much more satisfying? Snorted the old man. Hearing that it wasn't the old man, the head boss was at ease and his confidence inflated. He asked Long Chen who was cursing him behind his back. Long Chen answered, There are too many of them to count. Many people say something along the lines of fuck your daddy, damn your daddy, screw your daddy, little bastard, you want to be beaten? The head boss immediately raised his fist. Long Chen, who had long since been prepared, slithered his way to the old man's side. As a result, the old man knocked the head boss's fist back with a palm. The old man chided, What are you quibbling with a child for? Joking with you expresses how close he feels with you. How can you be so blind? What the fuck? The head boss almost couldn't breathe. The old man was being a bit too protective of this brat, wasn't he? What if he got used to that? Head boss, please don't get angry. I'm telling the truth, right? Said Long Chen. The head boss thought about it and nodded. It was true that people often cursed like this. His name was truly a bit off. But this title of his had been something he had fought hard for. He couldn't just toss it away. Fine, then don't call me head boss in the future. You can call me Boss Bao. Hee, Boss Bao, that sounds very mighty too, laughed Boss Bao. The other bosses were indifferent to this and simply enjoyed their wine. To them, changing their title was of no importance. It was simply there for a convenient ranking. They didn't mind. As they were drinking, the old man suddenly snorted. The boss's expressions also sank. The old man said, "There are 7 life-star experts who've come. Who wants them?" Long Chen was dumbfounded. What was going on? "Old Fourth and Old Sixth, you two go. It's been a long time since you've gotten any exercise," said Boss Bao. The 4th boss and 6th boss nodded. Finishing off their wine, they got up and left. Long Chen looked at them like an idiot. Boss Bao explained, 7 of the ancient race's idiots have come into the territory of my heaven-splitting battle sect. Ignoring the warnings, they barged their way to our gate. The ancient races? Are they coming for me? Fuck, these cowardly bullies, they don't dare to cause trouble for the Wine God Palace, so they have to set their sights on me, snorted Long Chen hatefully. For them to send out 7 life-star experts at once, they were clearly trying to force the heaven-splitting battle sect to hand him over. Long Chen's original intent in coming to the heaven-splitting battle sect was to repay their kindness. Back then, Feng Xinglia had gone to the eastern wasteland to support and pass on Split the Heavens to him, which had allowed him to escape countless life and death encounters. He had even detonated an ancestral item to escape the ancient race's entanglement. He hadn't thought they would be so obstinate as to chase him all the way to the heaven-splitting battle sect. And yet, how had they known that he would come to the heaven-splitting battle sect? He hadn't told anyone where he had been going. Xianjizi. It definitely had to have been done by Xianjizi. Long Chen suddenly realized that this entire matter definitely had Xianjizi's shadow behind it. According to the news that the Grand Xia had received, once that Xia Chen had annihilated the Grand Han's royal family, 2 life-star experts had failed to hunt him down. And yet, the heavenly fate pavilion within the Grand Han hadn't even made a noise, as if none of that had anything to do with them. But the fact that the ancient races had actually followed him here allowed Long Chen to see Xianjizi's shadow. Killing intent raged in his eyes. Until that bastard died, he probably wouldn't have any peaceful days. Long Chen didn't like bringing his trouble to others, but in the end, that trouble had still been brought to the heaven-splitting battle sect, infuriating him. "Child, remember, this is your home. Don't form any useless thoughts or you'll be beaten," said the 7th boss, looking not worried at all. "Old 7th is correct. You are now a disciple of the heaven-splitting battle sect. No matter how big the trouble you cause, we will help you bear it." Boss Bao nodded. Boom. The land quivered as a muffled explosive sound came from the distance. Long Chen could almost sense that terrifying pressure. But it was too far for him to see anything. All he could be sure of was that both sides had started fighting. Suddenly, 2 figures reappeared at the peak of the mountain. They were the 4th boss and 6th boss. They now had some bloodstains on them, and although they had reserved their auras, they were still unleashing boundless killing intent. What shocked Long Chen the most was that the 4th boss was carrying 2 heads, while the 6th boss was also holding a head. The 3 heads all contained the specific markings of the ancient races. From the pressure coming from them, they were clearly the heads of life-star experts. "Old 6th, you've gotten rusty." The 4th boss tossed the 2 heads to the side as if they were nothing and then poured himself a bowl of wine. The 6th boss also tossed the head in his hand aside. He grumbled, "It's the ancient races that are too cowardly. Otherwise, I'd have also gotten 2 heads." But when the 6th boss sat, Long Chen saw a bloody injury to his chest that looked like he had been clawed. That injury contained a destructive energy that made it so he couldn't heal it. Long Chen was shocked. These 2 had killed 3 of the 7 life-star experts of the ancient races in just a few breaths' time. That was too terrifying, wasn't it? Now Long Chen realized why Feng Xinglia said that the heaven-splitting battle sect's experts were true masters compared to the outside world's experts. Fighting across realms was easy for them. Of those 7 idiots, 3.5 ran off, said the 4th boss to the old man. The half he was referring to was how one of them only had half his life. It was difficult to say if he would live, but even if he did, he would be half crippled. "Old man, have I brought trouble for the heaven-splitting battle sect?" asked Long Chen. "Wouldn't slaughtering the ancient races like this anger the Ancient Race Alliance?" The Ancient Race Alliance was comprised of tens of thousands of races. Their total power was terrifying, and not something a single sect could resist. No one wanted to provoke them. Trouble? My heaven-splitting battle sect isn't afraid of that. The old man smiled. Seeing how dumbfounded Long Chen was, he continued, "You might not believe me, but those ancient race experts wouldn't even dare to let out a fart because of this." What? Now Long Chen was completely shocked. Boss Bao chortled, "Long Chen, do you know why we have such confidence? This term for head boss which is often used as a curse word, and literally the head boss says insert curse word look favorably upon you. Naturally, that sounds off. Here Long Chen is using the curses that have head boss in them. This was truly a question Long Chen had been wondering about. It seemed that amongst the three great sects of the heavens, it was the heaven-splitting battle sect that had declined the most. But they still seemed so confident. Suddenly, a flash of comprehension appeared in Long Chen's mind. He exclaimed, "A person with nothing isn't afraid of people with something to lose?" "Ah," the old man and the bosses laughed, pleased. "Good guess," praised the old man. Boss Bao said, "Previously, when my heaven-splitting battle sect was in its golden age, we also didn't fear anyone. And now, we don't have anything to worry about." What Boss Bao meant was that the heaven-splitting battle sect had been a dominating power back in its golden age. Now that it had declined, many sects thought of them as a group of half-dead madmen. It was the kind of sect that was most dangerous. Because they had already declined, there were few things that could intimidate them. In the eyes of others, the heaven-splitting battle sect had declined to the brink and was like a magical beast on the verge of death. It was very likely that right before it died, it would bring down the few people around it in its death throes. That was why no one wanted to provoke the heaven-splitting battle sect. "But we killed so many of them. Will there really be no problem?" asked Long Chen. Those were 3 life-star experts, not 3 chickens. This was a huge humiliation to the ancient races. If the ancient race alliance was infuriated and all their races were mobilized, then let alone a single heaven-splitting battle sect, even 10 heaven-splitting battle sects would be annihilated instantly. "Child, even a broken boat has a few nails to attack with. And our heaven-splitting battle sect doesn't have just a few." Back when the 3 great sects of the heavens were in their golden age, the ancient races were nothing more than a pack of dogs. But now the world has changed and the 3 sects have declined. Although the heaven-suppressing magic sect managed to maintain their complete inheritance, there is no way for them to compare to their golden age. The Xiantian Dao sect's Xiantian catalog's interpretation was destroyed, making it so no one can see through its profundities, essentially half-crippling the Xiantian Dao sect. But fortunately, they have the Xiantian Tower and the Reincarnation Mirror, 2 powerful divine items to maintain their karmic luck, making it so others don't dare to humiliate them. That Li Tinxuan's a man with some guts and schemes. He has courage and his last few plays have been very good. But in the end, he has been influenced by his master too much, and he still has too many misgivings. He doesn't truly dare to go all out. To tell the truth, I look down upon how cautious the Xiantian Dao sect acts. If a person lives like they're overlooking an abyss, like they're treading on thin ice, what is the point of them cultivating? If a person is afraid of death, they should just find a turtle cave and hide forever, said the old man a bit disdainfully. He didn't have a high opinion of the Xiantian Dao sect's conduct. "Child, you're also starting to be influenced by Li Tianxian. You like to account for everything, to make a perfect plot with no holes. On one hand, that isn't a fault. It's one of the essential requirements for someone in power. But you are different. You are not a ruler, you are a cultivator. Yes, intelligence can resolve problems. But then remember, why do battles even start? It's because intelligence cannot resolve all problems, and then you have to fight. If you form a dependence on your intelligence, if you start being very cautious, if you start avoiding trouble, then your drive will unconsciously whittle away. At that time, you will no longer be a true cultivator. You might be able to solve some problems with intelligence, but you have to remember, this is the cultivation world. In front of absolute power, intelligence won't save you. That's why my heaven-splitting battle sect's disciples are not taught to make any schemes. The outside world considers my disciples idiots with muscles for brains, but in truth, thousands of years ago, my heaven-splitting battle sect was in its own league within the Central Plains. Even now, although we have declined, look, does anyone dare to bully us like they bully the Xiantian Dao sect? As men, whether your glory blinds the world or you decline to the point that you have nothing, you have to stand with your spine straight. If anyone dares to bully you, you fight them to death. We can die while standing, but we cannot kneel to live. In the end, we have to remember that we cultivate to live with dignity. The old man looked at Long Chen profoundly. That was because this time, Long Chen had used his intelligence to escape from the Grand Xia and come here. In the face of a death trap, he had used various plots to survive. But the old man didn't look favorably upon that. This intelligence would become a stumbling block for Long Chen's cultivation path in the future. A dependence on intelligence would cause a lack of trust in his own power. That was something fatal to an expert. Long Chen's heart shook and he began to sweat. As expected, the old man's vision was sharp. He had even seen this possible problem with just a glance. Long Chen had truly been affected by Li Tianxian. Li Tianxuan's plotting had completely shaken Long Chen during the Battle of the Eastern Sea. A single person's plot could reap harvests hundreds of years into the future. That kind of ability to win victory without even being present was something he greatly admired. He had unconsciously been influenced by that and also started doing the same thing. He hadn't even realized it himself. But with the old man's warning, he felt a burst of fear. He had once more deviated from the 9-star He-Gem body art's intent without realizing it. He needed that resolution to split mountains when he encountered mountains, to cut apart rivers when he encountered rivers. It was already starting to cause a problem. By thinking of how to avoid things while saving the most energy instead of directly blasting his way through them, he had lost his original heart. I understand. Long Chen nodded. When he said this, the 7 bosses all looked at each other with shock. When Long Chen said this, his air subtly changed. His eyes became sharper, and he seemed like a sharp blade. All of them were powerful experts, and they all sensed this subtle change in his air. They felt the change in his heart. Now it was like a blade, which had been abandoned in its scabbard, had decided not to hide its sharpness and release its light. In just this instant, Long Chen completed an inconceivable transformation. For his heart to follow his will so easily, it was a clear sign that his Tao heart had reached a crystal-clear realm. Little fellow, you're quite the rare sapling. Boss Bao patted Long Chen on the shoulder with praise. Head boss overpraises me, said Long Chen humbly. Don't worry, I will definitely look after you, making you into a towering tree capable of blocking the wind and rain. Not only will I help you, but even the other bosses will help you. It's only natural to repay you for your filial gift of this wine, laughed Boss Bao. The other bosses also laughed and looked at Long Chen, their gazes fiery, making Long Chen's hair stand on end. He felt that these fellows were harboring some evil thoughts. Don't be afraid. We won't be too hard on you. We'll just break your bones and muscles. Once you're used to it, you'll be fine. The second boss patted Long Chen on the shoulder as well. The power in that patting made Long Chen's bones creak. Long Chen instantly realized that these old fellows were about to put him in his place. No wonder the old man had said that even if he bribed them, they would still beat him. Long Chen looked at the old man with a pleading look, but the old man shook his head. It's useless to look at me. This is the inheritance of the heaven-splitting battle sect. They also went through the same thing back then. However, if you have the power, you can put them in their place instead. If you don't have that ability, just accept your fate. Put experts who could kill life-star experts in their place? That joke was a bit too crazy. Wasn't this like a tiger beating a dog? And looking at the 7 bosses who were looking at him like hungry wolves eyeing a sheep, Long Chen's scalp turned numb. He was just about to say that this was too unfair, when he suddenly recalled that he definitely couldn't say such a thing within the heaven-splitting battle sect. Whoever's fist was stronger was the boss. Well then, it's Long Chen's first time, so go easy on him. Take turns. You can go so I can properly cultivate. The old man shooed them off while holding the high priest's wine with a pleased expression. The 7 bosses brought Long Chen to an underground training room. This was a huge training room with countless runes revolving around its walls. The ground was inlaid with blood-red bricks. These bricks were originally blue, but after countless years, the blood of countless disciples turned them red. Each disciple will leave behind their own color on this floor. Come Long Chen, I look favorably upon you, ha! Laughed Boss Bao evilly. All right, during the next 7 days, we will help you solidify your gains from the Heaven-Earth Divine Pool. The first day is the head bosses. Each of us will look after you during the next few days, so properly cherish this opportunity, laughed the 7th boss as he left with the other bosses. In an instant, the only ones left were Long Chen and the giant Boss Bao. Boss Bao was looking at Long Chen. With his arms that were even thicker than a normal person's legs, he looked like a beast staring at his prey. Go ahead and don't hesitate. No one ever escapes this misfortune. Back when I was here, I was also beaten. Regretfully, those old bastards that beat me are no longer present. A flash of pain appeared in Boss Bao's eyes, but it was quickly covered up by his powerful, rising aura. Fight like a man. Just standing there, his voice shook the space around him. His huge body was like a devil king's body, giving off incredible pressure. Fuck, I'm going all out. Long Chen clenched his teeth and summoned his divine ring. Stars appeared in his eyes, and scales appeared on his body. He charged at Boss Bao. Long Chen's fist smashed toward Boss Bao's face. That power caused space to quiver. But what stupefied Long Chen was that Boss Bao didn't even move. He simply allowed Long Chen's fist to smash into his face. He didn't even frown. Long Chen's face turned green. What kind of monster was this? His full power punch could shatter a mountain, but it was unable to cause any harm to Boss Bao. Is this all you have? Did you absorb that much of the divine pool's water for nothing? Let me help you stimulate your hidden potential. Boss Bao suddenly roared and a terrifying chi wave exploded. Long Chen didn't even have the power to block it, and he smashed into the wall, vomiting a mouthful of blood. He finally left behind his own contribution on the red floor beneath him. Long Chen was sitting in the heaven-splitting Battle Sex Plaza. The early sun's warm rays illuminated his bruised and swelling face. This was his first time feeling that the sunlight could be so warm, his first time feeling that even breathing was such a blessed thing, his first time feeling just how fortunate he was just to be living. In the past 7 days, he had experienced what others called hell on earth. 7 devil gods had been passionately torturing him. Even with his willpower, he almost went insane. Each hour, even each breath, had felt so long. During his intense fight with them, no, it should be called during his intense beating. Although Long Chen had given it his all, he hadn't been able to cause them any real injuries. And relying on their cultivation bases, they didn't feel any shame or have any misgivings about beating him. These 7 days had made him almost start doubting what he was doing with his life. They had really been shameless, and no matter how many times he had provoked them, they wouldn't fall for it, refusing to fight him with a foundation-forging cultivation base. As he was beaten almost to death, he had tried to think of anything that could save him, but nothing had managed to stop him from being beaten into a dead dog. Perhaps this was just what the old man had meant when he said intelligence was useless in front of absolute power. In fact, Long Chen suspected this was a deliberate lesson arranged by the old man. But after 7 days of hellish torture, he clearly sensed that his physical body had grown stronger once more. The pure energy he had absorbed from the Heaven-Earth Divine Pool seemed like it had been fermenting in his body, and this beating had stimulated it. It was like a sleeping beast had woken and started to bare its fangs. Their cruel beating was like the sharpening of a treasured blade. Long Chen's aura had steadied, and shockingly he was able to get a few blows of his own back on them. But after those blows, he always had to pay a terrifying price. What Long Chen didn't know was that although the 7 bosses had acted indifferent and natural, they had been incomparably shocked inside. They had been constantly stimulating his potential, making his combat power rise without him even being able to sense it. That innate domineering pressure of his caused even them to feel intimidated. This kind of domineering had nothing to do with cultivation base. It was a belief in himself, a belief that he could not be defeated, a belief forged through winning countless victories against impossible odds. Right now, he was facing 7 terrifying experts, and he didn't have the slightest hope of victory, but his Tao heart didn't break. It didn't even quiver. It was precisely due to his firm Tao heart that Long Chen suffered more than other disciples. When the other disciples' Tao hearts received an impact, the bosses would give them time to breathe and adjust themselves. But Long Chen's Tao heart was so firm that no matter how they beat him, he would still fight on. Sometimes, when they were too careless, he would make them suffer a bit too. Others would usually be taken care of for less than a day and then get a few days' rests. But Long Chen had continued with his torment for 7 consecutive days. After 7 days of beatings, he was covered in injuries, but by the 7th day, his fighting style had become stronger and more courageous, with his battle intent also growing. He was practically a monster. Long Chen was also like a devil that had killed his way out of hell to step into the mortal world just like the bosses now. His gaze was so sharp that others didn't dare to look directly at him. His aura continued to surge right at his fingertips, ready to explode at any moment. That was the instinctual reaction the 7 bosses had beaten into him. After 7 days of training, Long Chen had fully adapted to his new cultivation base and power. Compared to when he first arrived at the heaven-splitting battle sect, he was like a completely different person. Despite his bruised face, no one laughed at him. In fact, there were quite a few people who consoled him. Every single person here had gone through the same hellish beating. But they weren't beaten as much as him. Most of them were only beaten for half a day. Even people like Chang Hao were only able to endure the training for a day before needing to take a break. Just thinking of what it was like to be beaten by those ruthless figures, they shivered and felt that Long Chen was a prodigy just for surviving. Long Chen was currently resting. Ultimately, after 7 straight days of having his nerves stretched as tight as possible without any break, he had reached his limit. While resting, he also had a chance to make friends amongst these fellows without the slightest schemes in their hearts. The disciples' attitudes were very simple. Since they had acknowledged him, they treated him like family. Once he became friends with them, he found that they were truly pure and simple. Other than fighting, the only thing in their heads was cultivation. Their thoughts were very simple, and they could decide everything with their fists. Long Chen, let's go. I'll go fight for justice for you, called out one of the rank 7 celestials as he passed by. It's okay, let me just take a break. Long Chen shook his head, somewhat speechless. These fellows truly liked to fight. Whether they were eating or sleeping, one word and they would start fighting. In fact, sometimes when 2 people were in the midst of squatting and pooping, they might start fighting with their upper bodies. That didn't impact the natural movements down below. The heaven-splitting battle sect's cultivation technique was extremely special. Even these cultivators pooped within the sect just like ordinary mortals. They didn't eat medicinal pills. They didn't sit in meditation. They did not fast. Actually, they ate a lot, mostly eating the flesh of high-ranking magical beasts. They walked an alternative cultivation path. Long Chen still hadn't gotten completely used to this new tempo. He had no interest in their fight for justice. He guessed it was just another game of fighting. Let's go. Let's go fight for justice. Another person called out to Long Chen, using the same phrase. Long Chen declined again, but then curiously, over 10 people walked past, calling out to Long Chen, let's go fight for justice. What was going on? Just as he was wondering whether he should go with them to take a look, another person walked by. He was an extremely tall and square-faced man. Brother, let's go have some fun. Long Chen was startled and he asked, why aren't you going to fight for justice like everyone else? The square-faced man curiously asked, I am Bao Buping. Have you ever met anyone who would fight themselves? Long Chen almost fell off his rock. When they said they wanted to go fight for justice, they just wanted to beat you? Don't listen to their bragging. They're the ones who are about to get beaten, said Bao Buping. Only now did Long Chen notice that Bao Buping was a rank 8 celestial, and his aura was maybe even stronger than Chang Hao's. Intrigued, Long Chen went with him. He knew that there was a valley in this direction, a beautiful place for fighting. The rocks were red there too, but they weren't as bright and garish as the bricks in the training room where he had just endured his hellish torment. This was why the heaven-splitting battle sect's disciples had to eat so much meat. It was to make up for all their lost blood. When you arrived, I was in seclusion. As soon as I came out, I heard you were being taken care of by those 7 old ghosts. Brother, it's been hard on you, said Bao Buping sympathetically. Long Chen bitterly smiled. It seemed each one of these disciples had said the same thing upon seeing him. Those 7 ghosts are all evil. That one from my family is especially vicious. I don't even know how many times I've been beaten by him. But once I achieve my Tao, I'll definitely return all the beatings he owes me. Bao Buping clenched his teeth. He had clearly also gone through an extremely miserable experience. Your family? Are you talking about Boss Bao? Asked Long Chen, suddenly recalling that they had the same surnames. Who else? Said Bao Buping hatefully. Long Chen was speechless. It seemed Boss Bao treated his own family's children even more ruthlessly. But then thinking about it, of course he was ruthless. People who weren't ruthless were unable to reach such heights. Experts were all ruthless people, ruthless with others and ruthless with themselves. Fuck, you really think I'm easy to beat? Seeing a rank 7 celestial charging at him, Long Chen slapped him down to the ground, causing him to vomit blood and faint. There were dozens of experts charging at him as well. With a single punch from Long Chen, they toppled back just from the wind. This was not a battle skill, but brute power. One punch blew back the majority, and after 3 punches, there was no one remaining around him. I feel like we came here to beat Bao Buping and should focus on that. One of the fellows gave himself a way out, turning and running back to Bao Buping. Others looked at the poor people Long Chen had knocked unconscious and decided to go for Bao Buping as well. For the moment, no one dared to go after Long Chen. He was too ruthless when they compared him to Bao Buping. Long Chen was also startled. The past few days, he had been beaten badly by the 7 bosses and hadn't sensed how much his power had grown. He had naturally brought out his battle state from that time, and now he immediately saw the difference. That beating wasn't for nothing. My own physical body has surpassed my expectations. Long Chen looked at his own palm in amazement. The wind from a single punch was comparable to a magical art. His power had reached a terrifying level. Long Chen calmly watched. After 2 hours, the battle ended with everyone collapsed but Bao Buping. He was standing there with his head raised and laughing. But at this time, Bao Buping's robes were torn, and his face was bruised and swollen. There was quite a bit of blood on him, making him appear battered. It could be called a painful victory. According to his experience in the past few days, those scars would stay on Bao Buping's body for at least 3 days. So when a person first entered the heaven-splitting battle sect, it was not at all rare to see people with their faces black and blue. In fact, that was simply normal. Seeing people completely fine was the rare thing. As a celebration for Bao Buping's victory, Long Chen took out 2 jugs of fine wine, drinking with Chang Hao as well. Previously, the 2 of them worked in shifts, and every 10 days, one of them would be challenged by all the disciples. This kind of intense battle was a tradition in the heaven-splitting battle sect. But when Long Chen and Bao Buping found Chang Hao, Long Chen jumped in shock. Chang Hao was covered in blood, many of his bones broken. He was lying and wailing in pain on a stone bed. What? Who did this? Cried Long Chen. You don't need to ask. Other than those old ghosts, who would be so heavy-handed? Bao Buping was used to such a sight, and he reached out to help Chang Hao reconnect his bones with his spiritual yuan. The Chantal. Chang Hao clenched his teeth. Long Chen had medicinal pills for him, but he didn't give him any. The heaven-splitting battle sect's disciples cultivated the battle god's sacred canon. Injuries that came from people with the same cultivation technique were a kind of catalyst. When their seniors beat them, the main reason was to help them grow. Although this kind of growing process made others speechless, Long Chen was sure that each one of the heaven-splitting battle sect's disciples was not just one level stronger than the outside world's so-called elites. Although 2 people could be rank 5 celestials, the heaven-splitting battle sects rank 5 celestials would easily kill other rank 5 celestials from other sects in the same realm. This was the power of the battle god's sacred cannon. Whether it was the injuries themselves or the pain, they were good for stimulating their potential. If Long Chen gave Chang Hao a medicinal pill to reduce the pain, this beating would have been for nothing. Only after 2 hours of resting could Chang Hao manage to sit up. Curses poured out of his mouth. Only then did Long Chen learn that the one who had beaten him was the 4th boss. Long Chen, this wine is amazing! Chang Hao and Bao Buping exclaimed in delight. Chang Hao instantly forgot about his previous gloom. The majority of what Long Chen gave them to drink was wine from the first time he and Xia Yuluo had gone swindling in the wine god palace. It wasn't that beneficial to one's cultivation, so Long Chen could bring it out to drink randomly. As for the new medicinal wines they had refined, Long Chen was leaving them for the Dragon Blood Legion. They couldn't be wasted like this. But despite that, wine from the wine god palace was incredibly rare, and Chang Hao and Bao Buping felt like they were about to start floating. Long Chen, you should just stay here instead of going back to the Xiantian Dao sect. Wouldn't staying here with your brothers be 100 times better than going out and dealing with the stupid scheming in the outside world? Proposed Bao Buping. Right, you should stay. The 3 of us can work hard on cultivating, and then we'll quickly defeat those old ghosts. At that time, we can work together to knock them off their pedestals, said Chang Hao. Long Chen was speechless. This grand aspiration of theirs would probably be difficult to achieve. But his heart warmed from their sincerity. Although the old man and the 7 bosses hadn't said a word about the Heaven-Earth Divine Pool, Long Chen wasn't a fool. With just a few words from Chang Hao and Bao Buping, who were straightforward men without such thoughts in their heads, Long Chen managed to learn the truth of the Heaven-Earth Divine Pool, making him feel ashamed. With the Heaven-Earth Divine Pool completely used up, the Heaven-Splitting Battle Sect's inheritance would stop here. For him, the Heaven-Splitting Battle Sect had used up their final divine springs. This kind of kindness was far too great, so great that there was no way for him to repay it. Furthermore, he knew he had to act like he had no idea about this matter, because the old man and the bosses treated him as family, and they wouldn't want any repayment. Through the 2 of them, Long Chen learned that the Heaven-Splitting Battle Sect had only one divine item, the Heaven-Splitting Blade. This Heaven-Splitting Blade was sealed at the peak of the mountain the old man lived on. Right now, the Heaven-Splitting Battle Sect was relying on the Heaven-Splitting Blade to maintain its karmic luck. It was the only thing the Heaven-Splitting Battle Sect could rely on. But they were unable to use the Heaven-Splitting Blade, because it was connected with the Heaven-Earth Divine Pool. If they used the Heaven-Splitting Blade right now, the Heaven-Earth Divine Pool would be crippled. In the ancient era, the Heaven-Splitting Battle Sect was able to use the Heaven-Splitting Blade to absorb energy from the very air, replenishing the Heaven-Earth Divine Pool. But later, after an immense tribulation, the Heaven-Splitting Battle Sect had lost the last 3 forms of Split the Heavens, and any experts capable of using the 9 forms of Split the Heavens had fallen in a tribulation. Without the full 9 forms of Split the Heavens, it was impossible to activate the Heaven-Splitting Blade's power to absorb energy from heaven and earth and replenish their divine spring. If a crisis occurred and the sect had to use the Heaven-Splitting Blade, the seal on it would crumble, and then in the future, even if the full 9 forms of Split the Heavens were found, there would be no way to replenish the divine spring. That was why the Heaven-Splitting Battle Sect was currently at the end of the line. But the old man and the 7 bosses didn't let this matter suppress them. They continued living and eating as they had been, seeming to not care about the Heaven-Splitting Battle Sect's life and death. This kind of attitude of daring to stand up even if the heavens collapsed was admirable, but in the end, Long Chen continued to feel apologetic about this. He wasn't the kind of person who liked owing favors. But he was currently too weak to repay this favor. He could only wait until later. Come, let's toast to today's victory. Bao Buping raised his bowl of wine and touched it to theirs. After a few bowls of wine had gone down his throat, Chang Hao asked, Long Chen, do you know what my favorite color is? No. Long Chen shook his head. My favorite color is red, because when my family's boss beats me, all I see is blood. Only once I see enough blood will he stop. Chang Hao bitterly smiled. Although that was a bit exaggerated, Long Chen knew what he was talking about. The heaven-splitting battle sex bosses were truly ruthless. But they also had their sorrows. Then do you know what my lucky color is? Asked Bao Buping. What? Yellow. Why? Because when that fellow beats me, he won't stop until he beats the piss out of me, ha, laughed Bao Buping. Long Chen, what's your favorite color? Both of them asked. Long Chen smiled. According to what you've described, my favorite color would be black, because those 7 bosses won't stop until all I see is black. The 3 of them looked at each other and laughed. They were the ones who were beaten the worst by the bosses and were all sympathetic to each other. Fuck, it's too unfair. They use their higher cultivation bases to beat us. If we were in the same realm, we'd definitely defeat them. Bao Buping clenched his teeth. Fortunately, only the 3 of them were present. If the bosses heard them cry about something being unfair, they'd definitely have to be beaten. After drinking this wine, Long Chen had to admit that the old man was right. The heaven-splitting battle sex children were all beaten to the point that their skin became extremely tough. Just now, Chang Hao had been on the brink of death, but after drinking a few bowls of wine, he had fully revived. The 3 of them became boisterous, starting to play finger-guessing games and enjoying their drinking as much as possible. But Long Chen had only just taken out some more wine when a figure charged in and snatched away all the wine. Boss Bao. Long Chen jumped. The newcomer was precisely the head of the 7 bosses. Boss Bao's expression was furious. He knocked over Bao Buping with a palm, and taking off his shoe, he began spanking him hard with it. You little brat, you're getting more and more brazen. I told you to come over when your shift was over, and you made me wait 6 hours? You gave me the cold shoulder to drink wine. Boss Bao repeatedly smacked Bao Buping's butt with his shoe, causing him to wail. Didn't I just forget? You shameless thing, if you want to beat me, then beat me. How dare you steal our wine? Bao Buping might be a rank 8 celestial, but he was like a caught chicken in Boss Bao's hands, unable to even move. But as a man, in the face of his family's boss, even if he couldn't beat him, he could curse him. Brat, you dare talk back? Today, I'll beat you until you understand why roses are red. Bao Buping began to rain down harder blows. Boss Bao, this, Long Chen couldn't bear watching. This was too shameless. Not only did he steal a child's wine, but he also didn't let that child speak. Oh, Long Chen, you want to say something? If you dare to ask for leniency, I'll beat you with him. Raged Boss Bao, daring him to try it. Ah, you misunderstand. I just meant that you've already beaten Bao Buping's but to the point that it's numb. You should flip him over before continuing. Long Chen nodded with a smile. Then toward Bao Buping, he apologetically said, Sorry brother, I can only help you out so much. Long Chen, you fucker, raged Bao Buping. But he quickly realized that Long Chen was making a strange gesture to him with one hand, and then he fell silent. At an angle from which Boss Bao couldn't see anything, while Long Chen respectfully bowed to Boss Bao, he also made a gesture to Chang Hao with his other hand. Seeing that, Chang Hao immediately understood. Clenching his teeth, just as Boss Bao was about to continue beating Bao Buping, he suddenly took out his broadsword and slashed it at Boss Bao. Little brat, you dare? Boss Bao laughed in anger. He sent a single palm at Chang Hao's broadsword. The 3 of them were all familiar with the power of this palm. If struck, it was unknown just how far Chang Hao would fly. But just as Boss Bao attacked, a fierce and cold saber chi suddenly slashed out. Split the heavens 4. You bastard, so it was you all along. Boss Bao's heart shook. Long Chen's attack was coming too quickly. His cast time for this move was extremely short, and it was slashing at him at the same time as Chang Hao's broadsword. Boss Bao found it inconceivable that Long Chen could use the 4th form of split the heavens so quickly. Even so, you can't flip the heavens yet. Although Boss Bao didn't understand how he was able to do this, Boss Bao laughed and with one hand holding Bao Buping, the palm he was sending toward Chang Hao now turned toward Long Chen's saber image. He knew just how powerful this move was. 2 bangs rang out. The first one to land was Chang Hao's broadsword. When it landed on Boss Bao's shoulder, he didn't even flinch. But Chang Hao was blown back. The second bang came from when Boss Bao shattered Long Chen's saber chi. But he quickly found that something was off. This slash had contained the air of the fourth form of Split the Heavens, but it didn't contain any of its power. By the time he reacted, Long Chen's foot had viciously kicked toward his butt. "Brat, looks like you need a spanking." Boss Bao was infuriated. Within the entire heaven-splitting battle sect, the only one who dared to kick his butt would be the old man. If he allowed this to land, he'd have to find a piece of tofu to smother himself to death out of embarrassment. Suddenly, he twisted his body. He was about to dodge, but Bao Buping, who was still caught in his grasp, suddenly clamped onto his legs. Boss Bao was infuriated. If Bao Buping were his enemy, he'd easily let his aura erupt and kill him. But Bao Buping was his descendant, and there was no way he could kill him. That was the only reason Bao Buping dared to use such a shameless move. Long Chen's kick was just about to land. Helplessly, Boss Bao could only twist to the side to dodge. The twisting action also blew away Bao Buping. Boss Bao ended up rolling along the ground. To someone with his status, that could already count as losing. He couldn't help but smile, pleased. Today, these three brats had struck up the courage to flip the heavens. Attack together. Cut down this shameless bastard. Bao Buping stabilized himself and unleashed his strongest attack at Boss Bao. Bao Buping had already thrown caution to the wind. In any case, there was no way for him to escape a beating. It was better to fight all out. Chang Hao also unleashed his strongest move, which he had been brewing for a while. At the same time, Long Chen also took action. Violet flames sprang into existence around him, and holding a flame blade, he charged at Boss Bao. Seeing these three youngsters attack with such fierce power made Boss Bao nod in admiration. Although their cultivation bases were lower, limiting their combat power, this kind of undefeatable will was still incomparably sharp. This was the most important thing for experts. But although he had praise for them, he had no intention of showing mercy. Even toward his own family's child, he wouldn't be the slightest bit soft-hearted. Today, I'll let you see what a true power gap is. Boss Bao unleashed a single fist. When he unleashed his fist, space caved in, causing rays of light to explode. This wasn't a battle skill or magical art. It was the result of pushing his physical strength to the point that it could cause space to explode. Boom. The three of them were blown away. This punch had contained the power to split heaven and earth, and was completely unstoppable. Chang Hao and Bao Buping hacked up blood. Boss Bao had brought out his true ability with this fist. That kind of power wasn't something they could withstand. On the other hand, Long Chen didn't react. Surrounded by flames, he shot into the distance. As three people looked at his flying figure, they were suddenly shocked to see him explode. A fake? Crack. Boss Bao was the first to react. He was just about to move when an explosive, clanging sound rang out. Boss Bao could no longer move. He stood there like a statue. Bao Buping and Chang Hao looked at him in disbelief. A black object appeared behind Boss Bao's head. Brett, Boss Bao's eyes rolled into the back of his head, and he collapsed on the ground. Only once he was on the ground did Chang Hao and Bao Buping see that the black object behind him had actually been a black pot. The black pot slowly moved aside, revealing Long Chen's pleased expression. His excitement and delight weren't masked at all. After so many days of beatings, he had finally managed to vent. In the end, this pot to the head was truly satisfying. From the start, Long Chen had known that the three of them were unable to withstand a single punch from Boss Bao. It was impossible to beat him. So when they had attacked, he had intentionally summoned the flame armor to trick him. When he had attacked, it had actually been Hua Long attacking with flames, while Long Chen slipped behind him. Boss Bao had little experience dealing with a crafty opponent like Long Chen. After all, the people in the heaven-splitting battle sect were all direct men who preferred straight-on clashes. As a result, he ended up with this tragic ending. The legend of an unrivaled hero was destroyed by a single pot. Bao Buping and Chang Hao's eyes almost popped out of their heads. Their jaws could not be lower. It was almost possible to see their stomachs from their mouths. Only after a breath's time did Bao Buping laugh. Nice job, Long Chen. Starting today, you can be the boss of us three brothers. Then he ran over to the unconscious boss Bao and kicked him a couple of times to vent, cursing, "You shameless bastard, who said you could beat me, who said you could bully me?" His first kick landed on boss Bao's arm. That was fine. But the second kick landed on boss Bao's butt, precisely where his tailbone was. Long Chen's expression instantly changed. "Fuck, are you trying to kill us?" "Run!" shouted Long Chen, dragging them away. Boss Bao's eyes suddenly flew open. Bao Buping's kick ended up kicking him in such a painful spot that he woke up. "Fuck, why does my head hurt so much? HM? Wait a moment, you three bastards, get back here." Boss Bao felt the back of his head for a moment when he suddenly recalled what had happened. With a furious roar, Boss Bao flew into the air, seeing three distant figures fleeing. Who else could they be but Long Chen and the others? "You damn brats, don't even think about escaping." Long Chen was dragging the two of them. He had summoned lightning wings and activated his boots. This was as fast as he could go. But Boss Bao's speed was even greater than his. That shocked him. Boss Bao was faster than the Eagle Race's experts. "Long Chen, let's stop running. We'll do the same thing again," roared Bao Buping excitedly, battle intent soaring out of him. "We'll knock him out again. If we could do it once, we can do it again." Chang Hao also cried out excitedly. To knock out Boss Bao while still in the Foundation Forging realm was the most glorious achievement of his life. But that glory had come and gone too quickly for him to properly enjoy it. Now he wanted to relive it. Long Chen was speechless. Did they really think they had won just now through power? The only reason why there had been an opening was because Boss Bao had been careless. If they fought again, Long Chen would bet his life that Boss Bao would slam them into a wall so hard that they would never be able to get out. Knocking him out again? That kind of dream was far too unrealistic. "Old man, someone's trying to bully me," abusing his official position. Long Chen was flying straight for the old man's room. Long Chen charged to the peak of the mountain. Once he was at the wooden room, he saw the old man drinking wine out of a small cup. His eyes closed as he tried to comprehend the heavenly Taos contained within the high priest's wine. Ordinary disciples of the heaven-splitting battle sect didn't need to comprehend the heavenly Taos. Only someone who had reached the old man's level would need to in order to advance. That was why the old man refused to share the high priest's wine. "You little bastards, just wait for me to beat you to death." Boss Bao's eyes were scarlet as he chased after the three of them. But before he could even get close, he was sent flying by a black cane. The old man disdainfully said, "How can you be so shameless? After being knocked out by three children, you don't feel too embarrassed to get revenge?" At this time, the other bosses were also drawn over. Hearing that Boss Bao had been knocked out by three children, they all laughed, causing Boss Bao's fury to soar. "Old man, you've really gotten old. So you were even schemed against by a few children?" Laughed the seventh boss. "We won through power," retorted Chang Hao. But that just caused more laughter, causing Chang Hao and Bao Buping to also be infuriated. "Boss Bao, why don't you take out the wine you snatched from me and share it with the other bosses?" Long Chen suddenly changed the subject. Boss Bao could only take out the wine jugs. When Long Chen opened them, he stealthily added a little something to them. The old man suddenly smiled. Shaking his head, he didn't say anything. The disturbance was easily suppressed by the old man. With the placating of dozens of jugs of wine, the matter was brushed aside. But Boss Bao was still extremely displeased. The other bosses were all teasing him over this. He had truly lost face today. The other 6 bosses even said that no matter what tricks Long Chen, Bao Buping, or Chang Hao used, they wouldn't fall for it. Long Chen could see that while the bosses weren't very harmonious and liked to fight amongst each other, they were actually very united. Their teasing of Boss Bao was clearly an attempt to bait Long Chen and the others to challenge them. Seeing Bao Buping and Chang Hao's eager expressions, it was clear they had fallen for it. Boss Bao was the leader of the 7 bosses. According to their ranking, the 7th boss was the weakest. When the 7th boss said that he would be able to crush the 3 of them with just a hand, Bao Buping almost immediately agreed to the challenge. He had to be held back by Long Chen. "Hee, let's just calmly drink wine today. As for any challenges, let's discuss it after drinking the wine. Here, let me offer you some more wine. Long Chen laughed mischievously and poured out some more wine. As the bosses drank, the fourth boss irritably said, Long Chen, how can you be so slippery? Old Seventh has already said he'd accept your challenge with just one hand, but you don't dare to accept? Are you even a man? Long Chen was speechless. This kind of provocation was far too low level. If he were to use his full power, was there really any difference between using one or two hands? But Long Chen patted his chest confidently and said, I, Long Chen, am also a man who pees standing up. When you say you'll challenge us with one hand, you're looking down on us. I, Long Chen, dominated the lands, well, for at least a few years. For the three of us to work together to defeat the seventh boss brings us no glory. It's not interesting. Ha, exactly. The three of us don't need you to hold back. We can defeat you through pure power. Laughed Bao Booping uproariously. Long Chen's face turned green. Was this brat an idiot? He even dared to say such a thing? Wasn't he just asking to be beaten? As expected, the seventh boss stood and laughed. Ha, that's the style of the men of my heaven-splitting battle sect. Come, today I'll properly give you some pointers. We'll treat it as learning from each other in front of the old man. No rush, no rush. First, Chang Hao still hasn't fully recovered and can't fight at full strength yet. There's no point in such a fight. It'd be better to first drink. We can fight 3 days from now, said Long Chen. The boss's expressions were extremely calm, but there was an evil light in their eyes that completely sold out their inner hearts. It seemed even they had a wily old fox side that liked to scheme. The old man faintly smiled. That smile was extremely strange. When Boss Bao raised his wine jug and started pouring wine for him, he declined. Ah, no thank you. I rather like the taste of my wine. You can drink yours. Boss Bao and the others didn't see any clues from this. They just foolishly continued pouring out their wine, very pleased. They thought Long Chen and the others had been successfully baited into fighting with them. They didn't know that the old man was looking at them sympathetically. 3 days later, Long Chen, Bao Booping and Chang Hao were hiding within a dark corner. They suppressed their breathing as much as possible, looking like furtive thieves. They were looking at a small room. Long Chen, didn't you say we were challenging the seventh boss? What are we doing here? Asked Bao Booping. This room in front of them was just a bathroom. They were suppressing their breath to avoid the smell. The heaven-splitting battle sect was different from other cultivation sections. It was truly like part of the mortal world. The heaven-splitting battle sect's disciples drank and pooped much more frequently than other cultivators. When I said I wanted to challenge the seventh boss, I didn't just mean him. I meant all 7 bosses, said Long Chen. Are you suicidal? Exclaimed Chang Hao. As a result, he forgot to hold his breath, and a burst of fragrance surged into his nose. He hastily pinched his nose with his hand. Bao Booping was also shocked by Long Chen's words. That was too crazy. If we're going to do this, we're going to it properly. A small little fight is boring. This time, we're going to catch all of them in our net in order to raise our fame in one go. However they beat us normally is how we're going to beat them. The 2 of you haven't turned coward, have you? Asked Long Chen. Are you joking? When have we ever been afraid of anyone? The worst case is we get beaten again, and we're used to that already. But Long Chen, are you really sure? Bao Booping wasn't confident in this. This was too crazy for him to have any confidence. Don't worry, everything's been arranged. Sure. Long Chen suddenly made a shushing gesture. A figure suddenly rushed over to that room. That person was precisely the 7th boss. His speed was extremely quick, and he almost seemed panicked. As soon as he entered, they heard freedom ringing. The sound of a surging stream rang out. He got diarrhea? Chang Hao and Bao Booping found this inconceivable. With such a powerful cultivation base, even poison wouldn't cause such a thing, right? Just as the 2 of them were shocked, the other bosses also rushed over to that small room. The last one to charge in was Boss Bao. What the fuck happened? My stomach fucking hurts. Boss Bao's furious cursing rang out from that room. That roar was covered up by the sound of powerful farting and pooping. When the 7 of them exploded like this in unison, the sound was able to spread for 10 miles. Bao Buping and Chang Hao were dumbfounded. The 7 of them had diarrhea at the same time? They suddenly turned to Long Chen and saw an evil smile on his face. Explode! Boom! Following Long Chen's quiet exclamation, that small room exploded and 7 miserable figures were blown out, their bodies covered in filth. They were hastily pulling up their pants. So it was you 3 brats. Boss Bao's vision was sharp and he instantly saw the 3 of them hiding in the dark. Bao Buping and Chang Hao turned green. They could practically see the flames of fury coming out of them. Even if they didn't die this time, they probably wouldn't be living happily either. On the other hand, Long Chen was extremely calm. He shouted, "We agreed to have a heroic match today. We waited 6 hours, and now we find you messing around here? Just how old are you? Why is that you haven't matured at all? Could it be that you're afraid of us and don't dare to fight?" The 7 bosses exploded in fury. They were actually provoked by 3 little brats like this? They had never encountered such arrogant people before. "If I don't beat the piss out of you today, we'll change our surnames to yours." The bosses roared furiously, just about to teach a lesson to these 3 out-of-control brats. In truth, after drinking so much last time, they had all fallen unconscious and slept for 3 days straight. If it hadn't been for the intense pain in their stomachs, they wouldn't have woken. They still didn't know that Long Chen had put something in the wine he had given them. With Long Chen's alchemy arts and the Wine God Palace's wine energy, he was still able to pull an effective trick on them. "Hold. Today, the 3 of us are challenging the 7 of you in front of all the heaven-splitting battle sect's disciples. With the name of us 3 brothers, with the hot blood flowing through our chests, we are challenging our superiors as the junior generation disciples of the heaven-splitting battle sect. This challenge is sacred, something that cannot be blasphemed. You should tidy yourselves up. The 3 of us will wait atop Tempest Dragon Peak," shouted Long Chen. The 7 bosses looked at the filth on their bodies, and their fury almost exploded out of control. But staying like this was too embarrassing, and they hastily rushed away to clean up. Tempest Dragon Peak was the highest mountain in the heaven-splitting battle sect other than the one the old man lived in. It was like a furious dragon coiled in its territory, which was where it got its name. Now, Tempest Dragon Peak was packed with people. All the heaven-splitting battle sect's experts had rushed over. Something big had happened today. The 7 bosses had been challenged. And it wasn't just one boss but all 7 of them. Most shocking of all, the challengers were 3 young disciples. "Long Chen, no matter how today ends up, this bravery of yours is enough for us to prostrate ourselves toward you." Bao Buping and Chang Hao both looked at Long Chen with admiration. Long Chen's guts were truly big. Something they had never dreamed of daring to do had actually become reality under his lead. Even if they failed today, no one would laugh at them. Instead, they would admire the courage it took to challenge the bosses. After all, not just anyone would dare to do such a suicidal thing. This didn't only require bravery. Most importantly, if their display was brilliant enough, they would become the heroes of the heaven-splitting battle sect's disciples. So no matter what happened, they would definitely end up recorded in the history of the heaven-splitting battle sect. Even if they were beaten dead, they would still be heroes. Bao Buping and Chang Hao had already been beaten into dogs countless times. They were already used to it, but it was their first time getting beaten as absolute heroes. So they truly prostrated themselves in admiration toward Long Chen. At this time, the 3 of them stood atop Tempest Dragon Peak, their auras surging around it. They were like 3 sharp blades emitting unprecedented light. They were very imposing, looking like 3 undefeatable gods. The heaven-splitting battle sect's disciples were cheering loudly, their voices full of worship and reverence for these domineering figures who dared to challenge the bosses. The cheering was like a tsunami, coming wave after wave. "Fuck, even if we're beaten dead, it'll be worth it." Seeing these disciples cheering so loudly that their faces turned red, Chang Hao's blood began to boil. "You 3 brats, prepare yourselves. If we don't beat you into pancakes today, I'll write my name Boss Bao backward." Just at this moment, 7 figures rushed over. Boss Bao was at the front, and he immediately sent a punch at Long Chen. Boss Bao was attacking with appalling power right from the start. He was clearly infuriated and planning on properly giving them a harsh lesson. But what shocked everyone was that when Boss Bao's fist collided with Long Chen's palm, the scene of Long Chen being blown back, his bones broken and vomiting blood never occurred. Long Chen didn't even budge. For a moment, all the heaven-splitting battle sex experts could only watch with their jaws dropped. What the fuck? The seven bosses' power was the greatest within the heaven-splitting battle sect other than the old man. They were able to fight across realms and kill life-star experts. Boss Bao clearly hadn't been holding back in his rage. He had been planning on beating Long Chen and the others into flatbread to discipline them. But instead, Long Chen couldn't be budged and his expression was completely calm. That dumbfounded everyone. My spiritual yuan. Boss Bao suddenly sensed that the amount of spiritual yuan circulating within his body was less than 1/100th of what it was normally. Long Chen's fist suddenly slammed into his nose, causing his blood to spurt out. For Long Chen to break Boss Bao's nose like this elicited shocked gasps from everyone. There had never been any disciple to make Boss Bao bleed, and certainly not a foundation-forging disciple. Fucking hell, what's going on? Why is our spiritual yuan suppressed? Roared the fourth boss. He was the second one to charge in, which resulted in Bao Buping landing a punch to his head. A large bump immediately swelled up. Bao Buping and Chang Hao looked at the bosses, pleasantly surprised. They didn't know what was happening, but they knew that their cultivation bases had been suppressed to around the foundation forging realm. Brothers, the boss's cultivation bases have been suppressed to the foundation forging realm. Now's our chance to avenge our past grievances. Long Chen shouted and smashed his fist at Boss Bao, and Boss Bao blocked with his own fist. As a result, they were both blown back dozens of meters. Boss Bao was shocked and infuriated. With his first attack, he hadn't known his cultivation base was suppressed, and in order to not cause any accidents, he had been using the appropriate amount of power to beat them. That was what had resulted in Long Chen managing to injure him. But now, he was using all the power he could, and he ended up only in a draw. That made him finally feel a sense of unease. Attack. This is a rare chance to topple these shameless fellows. Today, we'll see who is the boss when we're in the same realm. Bao Buping and Chang Hao excitedly shouted and attacked, unleashing their powerful auras. Fuck, you evil brats. The seven bosses still didn't know that Long Chen had done something to the wine he had given them. Previously, they had still had their cultivation bases despite the diarrhea. But once they had washed up, the cold water had touched their skin, and this had caused some kind of miraculous change, making their spiritual yuan sluggish and suppressing their cultivation bases. It had happened so silently that they hadn't even noticed it. Who cares if we're suppressed down to the foundation forging realm? Everyone, bring out your real ability. Don't let others laugh at you. Boss Bao was worthy of being the head figure of the seven bosses, and he quickly calmed down, leading the seven of them in attacking Long Chen's group of 3. In front of the dumbfounded gazes of the heaven-splitting battle sex experts, 10 figures started a fierce battle, their fists and feet flying. Aya, you little brat. You broke my front teeth. Today, in my butt? Brats, your fists are pretty tough now that you want to flip the heavens. Brothers, fight. The seven bosses shouted and cursed. There was no skill to this brawl, and they were quickly bruised black and blue. The fourth boss was especially miserable. It was unknown if he had paid too much special attention to Chang Hao or not, but Chang Hao covered the fourth boss's head in bruises, to the point that the swelling almost looked like a strange hat. It was shocking and funny. The fourth boss cursed repeatedly about how Chang Hao was a brat who would rather allow himself to be beaten by others than let him go, making Chang Hao so infuriated that he wanted to cough up blood. The seven bosses were still powerful in their current state. Long Chen, Chang Hao, and Bao Buping were covered in blood, and it was unknown how many times they were struck. But Long Chen was extremely experienced in this kind of chaotic battle. He held back the strongest boss, Boss Bao, not letting him attack Bao Buping and Chang Hao. If Chang Hao and Bao Buping collapsed, all alone, he would also be knocked out by the 7 bosses. The 7 bosses might have their cultivation bases suppressed, but their physical bodies were too strong, and they also had immense battle experience. Fortunately, Long Chen had experienced hundreds of battles, and close-range fighting was his specialty. On his own, he faced Boss Bao, the 2nd boss, and the 3rd boss. They were the strongest of the 7 bosses, and Long Chen had to use every trick up his sleeve to hold them back. All his hopes rested on Bao Buping and Chang Hao. Bao Buping had the best chances. He was fighting the 6th boss and 7th boss. His chances of victory were the greatest. Bao Buping and Chang Hao both knew what Long Chen was thinking, and they launched all-out attacks. The heaven-splitting battle sex disciples were incomparably shocked as they saw Long Chen with his limbs flying through the air, managing to hold his own against the 3 top bosses. Even against the 3 of them, he was able to attack and defend properly. But Chang Hao and Bao Buping weren't able to fight as easily as him. The 2 of them had been beaten badly, and their faces had swollen to the point that they could only see out of a slit in the swelling. They were basically blind, fighting only with intuition. Their fighting style was one of direct collisions. A fist for a fist, a kick for a kick. This kind of fighting style was not stupid. In fact, it could be called very smart. Despite their own great battle experience, they couldn't compare to the bosses. If they tried to be fancy, there would be no way to win. Instead, exchanging injury for injury gave them better odds. Although they had to suffer as well, victory would be decided by who was more ruthless and could endure the longest. This was an unprecedentedly fierce battle. In the end, Bao Buping was truly a man. He managed to defeat the 7th boss. With the 7th boss knocked unconscious, the 6th boss was only able to last for a few exchanges before he also collapsed while cursing. Bao Buping was already swaying weakly, almost unable to keep standing. Waves of exhaustion battered him, but his shocking will forced him to charge toward Chang Hao's side. With Bao Buping's assistance, Chang Hao quickly managed to defeat the 5th boss and the 4th boss. From the moment Bao Buping knocked out the 7th boss, the spectators went wild with their cheering. Not even in their dreams would they have imagined the 3 of them would be able to make the bosses kneel. Seeing the bosses collapse one by one, the cheering grew louder and louder. This cheering gave Chang Hao and Bao Buping even more willpower. Despite having long since been exhausted, they rallied themselves to join Long Chen. Without a word, they charged toward the strongest one, Boss Bao. Boss Bao was shocked. Now he finally realized just how terrifying these brats that he often put in their place were. If he, the 2nd boss, and the 3rd boss were also defeated, it would be a complete defeat for them. That was unacceptable. Seeing the 2 of them charging over, shockingly, Boss Bao chose to retreat rather than fight. He refused to be entangled by them. At the same time, the 2nd boss and 3rd boss charged at Long Chen fiercely. They could see that these brats were too ruthless. The slightest carelessness would result in a miserable defeat. Right now, Long Chen was clearly attempting to work with those 2 to get rid of the greatest threat, Boss Bao. Boss Bao's physical body was too strong, and his destructive power was too great. When Long Chen and Boss Bao exchanged head-on blows, it always resulted in both sides being injured. But he had it much easier against the 2nd boss and 3rd boss. In their current state, they were clearly weaker than him. Seeing that Boss Bao wanted to escape, Long Chen snorted and shot after him, appearing in front of him and sending a punch at him while ignoring the 2nd boss and 3rd boss behind him. "You little brat, you dare to ignore us." This action was undoubtedly an insult to the 2nd boss and 3rd boss. The 2 of them were infuriated, and they smashed their fists at Long Chen's back. 2 explosive sounds rang out as the clothes on Long Chen's back exploded. Everyone clearly saw 2 black fist prints appear on his back. Although the 2nd boss and 3rd boss's cultivation bases had been suppressed to the foundation forging realm, their power was still immense. But after this attack, their expressions immediately changed and they shouted, "Watch out!" The 2nd boss and 3rd boss were shocked to find that Long Chen had used some unknown method to actually absorb a portion of their energy. Boom! Receiving their attacks on his back, Long Chen succeeded in borrowing a bit of their power to send a punch at Boss Bao. Boss Bao vomited blood and flew back. He flew right into Bao Buping and Chang Hao, who were rushing over. However, they were incredibly weak now and unable to cause any effective injuries on him. Clenching their teeth, they suddenly spread their arms, one of them wrapping his arms around his waist, the other wrapping his arms around his legs, firmly binding Boss Bao. Bastard! Boss Bao tried to throw them off, but the two of them refused to let go. Just at this moment, Long Chen's fist viciously landed on Boss Bao's furious and unwilling face. His eyes rolled up and he fainted. With Boss Bao knocked out, Bao Buping and Chang Hao also collapsed. They had already reached their limit and had no energy at all. Long Chen was also exhausted now. The bosses were truly powerful, and his body ached with pain. Many of his bones were broken. This was a direct competition. The bosses, Chang Hao, Bao Buping, none of them had used Heavenly Dao energy to heal. This was purely a stimulating battle to see who was stronger. Now the only ones left were the second boss and the third boss. All of their steps were unsteady as they tottered like drunkards yet continued to fight. After just a few breaths, the third boss was unable to continue and collapsed. With the third boss down, the second boss didn't last long either before being knocked out by Long Chen's punch. In the end, the only one standing was Long Chen. Heaven-shaking cheering rang out. Long Chen didn't even have a chance to enjoy the pleasure of victory when he felt the world spinning around him, and he also collapsed. Old man, you have to get justice for us. We were conned by that little brat Long Chen. Boss Bao and the other bosses were lamenting their loss to the old man at the peak of the mountain. This time, they had truly lost face. Furthermore, the 7 of them were still bruised in the face and appeared wretched. Their cultivation bases were still suppressed to the foundation forging realm, so they couldn't even get revenge. The old man faintly smiled upon seeing their wretched appearances. All he spat out was, "You deserve it." Old man, how can you say that? It was those 3 brats who used a sinister plot to con us. You're not going to stand up for us. Raged Boss Bao. Do you think I have that much time? Furthermore, it can't count as conning. All your cultivation bases were suppressed to the foundation forging realm. They fought 3 against 7, when you had quite the advantage in terms of both experience and physical strength. After losing, you still have the face to complain? Were all your years of cultivation focused on thickening your skin? Snorted the old man. How can you put it that way? We were completely unused to our suppressed cultivation bases, making it so we couldn't fight properly. Otherwise, how could we lose? Raged the 7th boss. His words were correct. Having your power suddenly suppressed would naturally cause your fighting style to become awkward. You really have gotten old and shameless. Do you have to find so many excuses for your loss? The old man looked contemptuously at them. Old man, you can't pamper them so much. If you allow them to act so wildly, how are we supposed to look after them in the future? Demanded the 6th boss. The 7 bosses were the masters within the heaven-splitting battle sect. Other than the old man, they had the highest authority. And yet such figures had been beaten by 3 juniors, and in front of all their disciples at that. None of those disciples would revere them like they did before. If this continued, there would be no way to discipline those brats. That was why they joined forces to demand the old man deliver justice for them. He had to punish Long Chen's cheating. The few of you don't feel ashamed to complain? You should be thanking Long Chen. The old man shook his head and sighed. Thank him? Are you joking? He made us get diarrhea, then covered us in crap, and then beat us. Why would we thank him? The bosses felt that this kind of logic was insane. The medicine Long Chen put in your wine expelled the toxins that have been accumulating for many years. You should know that our heaven-splitting battle sect's Battle God Sacred Canon is too domineering. It places special emphasis on the physical body. Each stage of cultivation corresponds to one of the 9 forms of Split the Heavens, and using that form in the corresponding cultivation realm allows one to expel the toxins accumulated through practicing the Battle God Sacred Canon. As soul transformation experts, According to the normal process, you should be training in the 7th form of split the heavens. But we only have up to the 6th form now. The result is that your bodies grew without expelling the energy that would be used up with the 7th form of split the heavens, and that energy turned into toxins in your bodies. That's also the reason why even after all these years, you've been stuck at the peak of the soul transformation realm. Back in my day, I had a lucky encounter which allowed me to break through to the life star realm. That was luck. But Long Chen has completely expelled the toxins in your bodies, and after a few more days, when the wine energy fades and your cultivation bases are restored, you will sense the huge changes in your bodies. Long Chen completely opened all your impossible bottlenecks. Within the next 2 years, all of you should be able to advance to the life star realm. Toward the end, the old man couldn't help but feel a bit emotional. That little fellow Long Chen truly had some interesting ideas. He actually used such a method to repay his debt. After absorbing all the energy in the heaven-earth divine pool, Long Chen had been ashamed. Although he hadn't expressed it, it wasn't able to escape the old man's eyes. In the beginning, when he had first noticed Long Chen adding something to the wine, he had thought it was purely for revenge. He hadn't said anything, because they could mess around as they wanted. But once he saw the boss's cultivation bases suppressed, he suddenly understood that Long Chen was doing this to silently repay the sect. The 7 bosses had been stuck at the soul transformation realm for countless years due to not being able to use the 7th form of split the heavens. Their chances of advancing had been extremely slim. But now, Long Chen had broken their bottlenecks, and he had done so in a way that looked like he was a child messing around and had accidentally caused such a result. If someone else did this, the old man wouldn't have realized it. But it was because that brat was too smart that he had thought it over and realized his intentions. Long Chen would simply refuse to admit that he had done this intentionally, and that made the old man feel a bit helpless as well as grateful. Long Chen didn't like owing favors, but this repayment was truly great, far surpassing the value of the heaven-earth divine pool. In the next 2 years, the heaven-splitting battle sect would gain 7 life star experts, which would surpass the level the heaven-splitting battle sect had ever achieved in recent years after declining. The 7 bosses were dumbfounded upon hearing this. They hadn't expected Long Chen had given them such great fortune without them even knowing about it. They almost couldn't believe that they would be able to break through their current bottlenecks. But the old man was personally guaranteeing this. That meant it was certain. Thinking of how they had been so furious just now, they all felt a bit bad. You can go now. Long Chen's wine came from the Wine God Palace, so it's very powerful. It'll probably take a few days before your cultivation bases recover. Even at that time, don't mention this matter. Just act like nothing happened. If a child isn't obedient, you should properly beat them, said the old man. The 7 of them nodded. They would probably continue being ruthless with the other disciples, but if they continued being so heavy-handed with Long Chen, it would be a bit ungrateful. Long Chen had given them a beating as well as a sweet. The conflicting flavor caused them to feel a bit awkward. Long Chen, Bao Buping and Chang Hao spent 3 days drinking wine in high spirits. The battle record of them defeating the 7 bosses was too marvelous. Chang Hao and Bao Buping finally had the qualifications to brag. As they bragged, their saliva splattered through the air. The glory of this battle had left a rich aftertaste. Drinking wine as they repeatedly talked about how they had fought so well was addicting to them. They repeatedly brought up how the 2 of them had marvelously worked together with just a glance at a critical time to tie down Boss Bao. The 3 of them were in the midst of bragging when Boss Bao appeared, his expression icy. Long Chen and the other 2's expressions changed, and they hastily fled. Little brats, I heard your bragging a while ago. It was something about beating bosses into dogs? Fuck, if I don't beat the crap out of you today, then you can count your butts tight. Boss Bao instantly caught up to them and gave them a fierce beating. With his cultivation base returned, the 3 of them didn't have the slightest ability to resist. They were knocked down in just a few blows. You shameless old thing, if you have any ability, suppress your cultivation base back to the foundation forging realm so we can have a real fight, cursed Bao Buping. This cursing got him another knock in head end. Boss Bao brought the 3 of them to the peak of the mountain where the old man and the other bosses were waiting. I called you over today because I need to discuss an extremely important matter with you, said the old man solemnly. The three of them sensed the atmosphere was off. Even the bosses had worried expressions. Their hearts shook. The old man said, "After much consideration, I've decided to bring this up. This matter is very dangerous, so you'll have to think it over." "Old man, are you talking about that matter?" Bao Buping and Chang Hao's voice quivered slightly with excitement. The old man nodded. "Yes." Long Chen still doesn't know about it, so I'll start from the beginning. He waved his hand, and a huge stone tablet appeared in the air. It was hundreds of meters tall and emitted an ancient air. The stone tablet was black as ink, and images were carved into it. Seeing those images, Long Chen's heart pounded. Those images were clearly the different forms of split the heavens. But the stone tablet was fractured. Only half of it was present. In that instant, Long Chen understood. The old man sighed as he looked at the stone tablet. This is the heaven-splitting divine tablet. It has the original illustration of the 9 forms of split the heavens. But due to the tribulation from back then, it fractured and its divine nature weakened. Because we no longer have the original guidance of the full tablet, the split the heavens we cultivate has probably started to deviate from how it's supposed to be. The heaven-splitting divine tablet is a special inheritance divine item, and a portion of it has been lost. With it lost, there is no way for us to comprehend the true essence of split the heavens. A sad expression appeared on the 7 bosses' faces. Thinking of back in the day, the heaven-splitting battle sect was the leader of the 3 great heavenly sections. Just how powerful did they have to have such a title? Just relying on a single powerful battle skill, they had been able to dominate the martial heaven continent. But now they had declined to the point that their inheritance was about to be severed. Just thinking about it distressed them. This was a humiliation. "Old man, does the remaining portion of the heaven-splitting divine tablet still exist?" asked Long Chen. "It definitely still exists. Otherwise, the divine nature of the heaven-splitting divine tablet would have completely faded," said the old man assuredly. "Have you finally agreed to let us go search for it?" asked Bao Buping excitedly. Bao Buping and Chang Hao had both previously begged the old man to let them go search for it, but he had always refused. Now that the old man had taken the initiative to find them, they were incomparably excited. "Yes. Although I can't tell you the exact location, I can sense its general direction. But even after all these years, the divine tablet is still broken, while countless heroes have lost their lives," sighed the old man. "Where is it?" asked Long Chen. "One of the 7 great danger zones, Devil Spirit Mountain." The 3 words of Devil Spirit Mountain smashed into Long Chen's heart like hammers. Although the martial heaven searing was also considered one of the 7 danger zones, its danger was actually the lowest amongst the 7. That was because it was too huge, and the main danger stemmed from the sea demons. The sea demon race's experts would rarely attack human cultivators unless the latter caused trouble for them first. But other than the martial heaven searing, the other danger zones were true lands of death. Humans were forbidden from entering. Zheng Wenlong had once mentioned Devil Spirit Mountain to Long Chen. At that time, it had become enshrouded in mist, making it impossible to gather the spirit-gathering grass that grew around it. That grass was the main ingredient of the Forging Heart Spirit Connecting Pill. When Long Chen had asked Zheng Wenlong about Devil Spirit Mountain, Zheng Wenlong had told him despite its name and fame as one of the 7 danger zones, there had never actually been any devils to come out of it. Instead, rather than devils, what people occasionally saw were scenes of an immortal wonderland. Many heard the sound of immortal music that allowed their cultivation bases to progress. Some would even suddenly break through their bottlenecks. It was extremely strange. There were many legends regarding Devil Spirit Mountain. Some of those legends were beautiful, and some of them were evil, making it impossible for people to tell exactly what it was. But Zheng Wenlong had warned Long Chen that he absolutely couldn't enter it. With Zheng Wenlong's status, for him to say such a thing meant that he knew some secrets regarding it that he couldn't disclose to Long Chen. All he could do was warn him. Now that he heard the Devil Spirit Mountain be mentioned by the old man, Long Chen's heart pounded. He had never imagined that the other half of the heaven-splitting divine tablet had been lost in Devil Spirit Mountain. "Old man, are you sure about that location?" asked Long Chen. "All I can say is that the other half of the heaven-splitting divine tablet is definitely in Devil Spirit Mountain. Let me tell you a bit about the Devil Spirit Mountain, information which pertains even to the whole continent's secrets." Long Chen, Bao Buping and Chang Hao also hastily sat properly in anticipation. Even the bosses were solemnly sitting, wanting to hear. The old man sank into thought for a moment, most likely organizing his thoughts. He then began to tell them a story that was known only to a few people. Over 100,000 years ago, the Martial Heaven continent had gone through a tribulation that had changed it forever. That time was called the Dark Era. That was a time where the entire Martial Heaven continent had nearly been wiped out. This dark era has lasted for over 10,000 years. As for the cause of the dark era, no one could say any longer. But its conclusion had been passed down through the ages. The dark era ended with a huge calamity. Its darkness had caused the entire continent to be gravely injured. Countless foreign experts had invaded the Martial Heaven continent, attempting to slaughter all life. Faced with their death, the Martial Heaven continent's experts fought back. Rivers of blood flowed through the continent, and mountains of corpses piled up. Almost all the top experts of the various large sects were lost. But in the end, under the guidance of a sovereign, they managed to beat back the invaders to their own worlds, saving the Martial Heaven continent. "A sovereign? What kind of existence is that?" asked Bao Buping. He had never heard of such a thing. "Shut your mouth. Don't interrupt the old man." Boss Bao slapped Bao Buping on the back of his head. The old man ignored the disturbance, continuing with his story. That had been a true apocalyptic battle. If they had lost, all this world's life forms would have been slaughtered. At that time, every sect had fought with their lives on the line. Only a few supreme sects were able to survive. But even they took heavy losses. Their sect's treasures ended up crippled, severing their inheritance. With the full attack of all the sects, the invaders also lost countless experts. In the end, once they were forced back to their worlds, their entrance to this world was sealed, restoring the Martial Heaven continent's peace. But even though peace came back to the continent, it had been gravely wounded. After a period of resting, dissenting factions appeared like the ancient races, and it was at this time that the corrupt path suddenly showed up with great power. Another chaotic period of fighting occurred as all the large powers fought over resources, devouring other powers, trying to stabilize their foundations. A few neutral powers also appeared. Mysterious existences sprang up like spring bamboo. Although the Martial Heaven continent eventually recovered, after that dark era, the world had changed. Another sovereign never appeared. As for Devil Spirit Mountain, it was one of the entrances that the invaders had gone through back during the Dark Era. At that time, the Heaven-Splitting Battle Sect, Xiantian Dao Sect, and other sects all paid a bloody price. The Heaven-Splitting Divine Tablet had been broken at that time, with a portion of it lost within. Devil Spirit Mountain now had a sovereign seal on it, but due to the encroaching of time, it had started to weaken in the past 30,000 years. It was now possible for the Martial Heaven continent's people to enter Devil Spirit Mountain. But the seal refused to allow people above the Jade Core realm to enter. Once the sovereign seal had weakened, countless brave experts had attempted to charge into Devil Spirit Mountain. Of course, this had included the elites of the Heaven-Splitting Battle Sect. But the experts who charged into Devil Spirit Mountain all died without exception at that time. As a result, most experts no longer dared to enter. However, there was an exception to that. Other experts braved the danger in search of treasures, but the Heaven-Splitting Battle Sect was trying to regain its inheritance. In the past 30,000 years, it was unknown how many generations of their top geniuses had attempted to find their lost inheritance. Regaining it was each of these disciples' sacred duty. Even though they had all died, not one of them had batted an eye. But as more time passed, the Heaven-Splitting Battle Sect's heart had grown cold. In all these years, only 2 of their disciples had ever managed to return from Devil Spirit Mountain. The first disciple died as soon as he got out without saying a word. The second disciple also didn't manage to say anything before dying right after getting out. But he had been tightly clutching a tile in his hand that had one word hastily written on it: hoax. Clearly this disciple had only barely managed to scrawl this down before dying. He had used his powerful willpower to charge out and bring this information. It was unknown what that disciple's true intent was behind what he had written, but it was clear that there was a huge conspiracy hidden within. That was why in the past 8,000 years, the heaven-splitting battle sect hadn't sent a single one of their disciples in. Furthermore, during this time, another few things occurred which further corroborated that disciple's final word. Just 3,000 years ago, strange sights had started appearing in the entrance of Devil Spirit Mountain. Sometimes flying immortals would appear, sometimes immortal music would ring out. Projections would also show up in the air. Amongst those projections was the heaven-splitting battle sect's priceless treasure, the heaven-splitting divine tablet. After seeing these projections, countless experts had once more charged in. Although they had known it was dangerous, they were unable to resist the temptation of so many treasures. Furthermore, they wanted to know the secrets of Devil Spirit Mountain. Experts had flocked over like a mob. It was said that at that time, at least hundreds of thousands of experts had charged in, but only a few managed to live to tell the tale. According to their stories, there were countless treasures inside, but there were also terrifying life forms guarding them. Those life forms were incredibly powerful, and humans were slaughtered by them. Although those life forms' cultivation bases had been at the King Realm, the human race's experts had been too weak to receive even a single blow from them. In the next few years, most experts no longer dared to think about invading Devil Spirit Mountain. But the greed and curiosity of humans were limitless. Although Devil Spirit Mountain hid countless dangers, there were still a few people who had heaven-defying luck that managed to escape with treasures. Some people obtained an eternal life fruit that allowed a cultivator whose lifespan was about to run out to live another 1,000 years. Some people obtained remnants of ancient cannons that allowed their cultivation bases to advance and shake the world, making them legendary existences. Some people also managed to obtain the ancestral items of their sects, restoring their declined sections. Some people also heard the pointers of powerful experts which allowed their cultivation bases to rapidly progress. To sum up, there were countless legends about Devil Spirit Mountain. Everyone knew the danger within. If you entered, your chances of leaving alive were very, very low. According to the experience of those who returned, the life forms within had extremely sharp senses to those at the King Realm. On the other hand, Foundation forging experts had a certain chance of dodging their senses. Our heaven-splitting battle sect's disciples have more than enough bravery, but they're lacking in their heads. But Long Chen, you possess both factors, so, the old man sighed. The old man had once told Long Chen that he had to trust his power instead of relying on intelligence. But now that he said this, he felt like he was contradicting himself. But the reality was just like that. When they just relied on power to try to solve things, they ended up losing the lives of countless disciples. On the other hand, it was those free cultivators who relied on their wits and luck who had a low chance of obtaining some treasures and leaving alive. So he had no choice but to admit that intelligence was also important. It just felt contradictory. I understand. When I handle things in the future, I'll rely on my power instead of intelligence. Power will be my #1 choice. But when I run into an enemy with absolute power over me, I won't just foolishly send myself to death. Having a few schemes and thoughts is also necessary. It's up to my own control, and I won't let it rattle my Dao heart again, said Long Chen. Good, that's good. But Devil Spirit Mountain is filled with danger, so you have to think it over carefully, said the old man. Old man, I am also a member of the heaven-splitting battle sect. This is my duty. And I also want to experience just how terrifying this Devil Spirit Mountain is. Long Chen smiled slightly, because high risk signified high reward. Devil Spirit Mountain was situated near the south of the Central Plains eastern section. If someone were to buy a map with this location on it, the word forbidden would be marked on it with a human skull. Devil Spirit Mountain was just a name. Whether it was truly a mountain or not was something no one knew. All people knew was that the entrance to Devil Spirit Mountain was located at the peak of a mountain. This mountain was huge, but there was not a single blade of grass growing on it. All the earth here was scarlet. Even the dirt contained an aura of decay and yet also vast pressure. Legend was that this ground had been dyed with the blood of countless experts, and even after all these years, it still emitted that terrifying pressure. Cultivators below the Xiantian realm wouldn't even be able to approach this place. Only people at the Foundation Forging realm and above could withstand this pressure. There were two ancient stone pillars at the top of the mountain. They soared into the air, looking like the pillars of a gate that was propping up the sky. The pillars formed a huge entrance around a mile wide while emitting their own terrifying pressure. Blood-red runes revolved over the stone pillars, causing the void to quiver. Between the two pillars was a huge blood-colored runic seal. Its pressure was on a completely different level. It was something that could suppress heaven and earth. Below the seal was the entrance to Devil Spirit Mountain, while the two stone pillars were a huge sealing formation. As for the runic seal between them, that was the sovereign blood seal. At this time, Long Chen, Chang Hao, and Bao Buping were standing in front of the gate, looking in shock at the huge seal. They felt power from that seal that they had never felt before. A reverence that came from their souls gave them an urge to kneel toward it. This is a seal created through the blood of a sovereign? Even after 100,000 years has passed, it still possesses such power. Just what kind of existence is a sovereign? Bao Buping looked at the sovereign blood seal with shock. Just how terrifying did a sovereign have to be for a seal they had placed over 100,000 years ago to still possess such might? Even after all this time, this seal was stopping the life forms on the other side from taking a single step into the martial heaven continent. The old man said that sovereigns are the existences that stand at the peak of this world. They are literally and figuratively the sovereigns of the world, existences that are completely unrivaled, said Chang Hao worshipfully. Long Chen also looked at the sovereign blood seal with shock. This seal condensed through blood energy was still able to protect the martial heaven continent from whatever creatures existed in Devil Spirit Mountain on the other side. When Long Chen looked at the sovereign blood seal, the seal suddenly quivered slightly, forming an image that only Long Chen could see. That was an image of a white-robed man standing in the air, his eyes as bright as the sun and his hair falling to his shoulders. He was like a god, so imposing that others would feel it was a blasphemy just to look at him. He saw the white-robed man form a hand seal, causing heaven and earth to shake. The clouds were blown away as the earth suddenly soared to form a huge mountain. Long Chen's heart pounded. That mountain was very familiar. It was Devil Spirit Mountain. According to this, Devil Spirit Mountain had been personally formed by the white-robed man. As Devil Spirit Mountain took shape, the countless corpses littered on the ground were absorbed along with their blood, condensing into countless blood runes. Then two blood-colored stone pillars slammed down onto the mountain. Long Chen clearly saw those two pillars absorb all the blood runes. When the pillars fell, the entire world became blood-colored for an instant. It was like the world had been dyed in blood. The stone pillars rapidly absorbed that energy. At the same time, the white-robed man pointed out a single finger. Blood chains condensed of his own blood flew out. The blood vaguely shone with immortal light. The blood chains shot out, sealing heaven and earth, forming a huge runic seal between the two pillars. Long Chen didn't know why he was seeing this, but he could guess that this man was that legendary sovereign. This scene was how the sovereign had sealed Devil Spirit Mountain. The sovereign had used the blood of all the experts that had fallen in battle to condense a huge seal and then used his own blood to completely lock up Devil Spirit Mountain. Regretfully, Long Chen didn't get a chance to see any experts or different life forms from the other side. But just this was enough to completely shock him. Every move of this sovereign had brought with it the flow of the Tao. It was like heaven and earth was subservient to him. After forming the seal, the sovereign clasped his hands behind him as he stood there, looking around. Shockingly, he then turned to look at Long Chen. Long Chen's heart almost jumped out of his chest. Even across the river of time, he could sense this existence that could shake heaven and earth looking at him. Long Chen didn't say anything and neither did the sovereign. The two of them silently looked at each other. In the end, the sovereign smiled and sent him a divine message. The game breaker has finally arrived. Long Chen's heart pounded. This was the second time he heard of the game breaker. Back in the Four Nations ancient remnant, he had encountered that mysterious elder that had also said the same thing. For the sovereign to also say the same thing shocked him. Could it be that this sovereign and that elder were from the same generation and knew some heaven-shaking secret? What is it, Long Chen? Just at this moment, Bao Buping's voice rang out beside Long Chen's ear, and that scene instantly vanished as if it had never appeared. It was like everything he had seen had just been a dream. Long Chen saw the sovereign blood seal still floating there, but the image of the white-robed man had disappeared. "It's nothing. I was just entranced," said Long Chen. His heart was heavy. He felt like he had been drawn into an enormous plot, or perhaps he should say he had been drawn into a heaven-shaking game. He was like someone on the verge of death who was frantically trying to grasp the final life jacket. But even he didn't know what this life jacket was. In order to grasp this life jacket, he would need to continuously accumulate power. Right now, he felt a bit lost. Although he was now so much stronger than in the past, the sense of crisis only grew greater. He still had no idea what problem had occurred with the 9-star hegemon body art, and why the 5th star refused to appear. He suddenly felt an unprecedented feeling of crisis. "Long Chen, you're here?" Just at this moment, a voice that had no good intentions rang out. There were quite a few people at the Sovereign Blood Seal, at least a few dozen people. They were mostly wild cultivators who had been preparing themselves to test their luck in Devil Spirit Mountain. Most of them had run into a bottleneck with their cultivation and no longer had any hope of advancing in their lifetimes. That was why they were determined to test this extremely remote chance while having prepared to die. But some of them were extremely confident experts with terrifying power and great ambitions who came to adventure in Devil Spirit Mountain. As for the speaker, it came from the latter group. It was a lanky man who appeared to be in his 20s. His arms went past his knees, and he was covered in dark red fur. Long Chen looked at him, and based on his appearance, it was easy to tell that he was from the ancient races. He was a rank 8 celestial with a powerful aura. His gaze was like a blade sweeping across Long Chen. He didn't bother concealing his hostility. "A monkey?" asked Long Chen. "Bastard, I came from the respected Scarlet Blood Gold Ape race. Long Chen, if you have any guts, you'll have a fair fight with me to resolve the enmity between you and the ancient races. Of course, you can also hide under the protection of the heaven-splitting battle sect if you're a coward." "It's up to you," replied the ancient race expert disdainfully, a crafty light in his eyes. A rank 8 celestial wanted to challenge Long Chen? Bao Buping and Chang Hao exchanged a look and almost laughed. It really wasn't possible to stop people who wanted to court death. Long Chen smiled faintly and said, "I'm surprised you don't feel embarrassed to use such low-grade provoking arts. Aren't monkeys supposed to be smart? Why is there so much crap in your head?" The ancient race expert was infuriated, and he sneered, "All you need to do is agree to a fight. Where did all this bullshit come from?" This expert had long since heard of Long Chen's name. He had heard how the ancient races had lost out because of him several times, and how they had suffered a huge loss especially during the matter of the Four Nations ancient remnant. Then several race leaders had gone to demand Long Chen be handed over from the heaven-splitting battle sect without receiving the ancient race alliance's approval. As a result, they had almost been annihilated. If they hadn't fled fast enough, not even a single one of them would have escaped. This matter had shaken the ancient races, and the ancient race alliance had sent out the word not to provoke the heaven-splitting battle sect. The heaven-splitting battle sect was well known as a pack of madmen in the Central Plains. Even if they were annihilated, they would very likely launch a crazy counterattack as they died. Anyone who provoked them at this time would just be an idiot. The ancient race alliance didn't support the race leaders who had acted of their own accord and instead gave them a vicious tongue lashing. They sent out orders to absolutely not to provoke the heaven-splitting battle sect. As for this disciple, he was extremely confident, but he remembered those orders. So he didn't directly attack. He wanted to infuriate Long Chen to make him fight, and that wouldn't count as offending the heaven-splitting battle sect. Long Chen looked at him with a strange light in his eyes. He helplessly said, "All right, I won't say any more nonsense. Let me experience your amazing moves. But let me first warn you, I'm not very good at holding back. If you die, don't blame me." "Huh, you want to kill me? Keep dreaming. I'll show you the terrifying ability of the Scarlet Blood Gold Ape race." That disciple raised his head and laughed, his aura instantly exploding. The Scarlet Blood Gold Ape race's expert sneered and suddenly unleashed his aura. Runes revolved around him as his aura soared. What slightly surprised Long Chen was that his dark red fur suddenly became golden. In the instant that his fur changed color, a huge illusory image appeared behind him. The roar of an ape king shook the sky. "Hee, Long Chen, get ready to face your death. My Scarlet Blood Gold Ape race's power can't be compared to other ancient races. I'll let you see what true power is." The ancient race expert sneered, a brutal light shining in his eyes. Raising his furry fist, he sent a single punch at Long Chen. Pow! In front of the startled gazes of Chang Hao, Bao Buping, as well as the wild cultivators who had come to take their chances, the Scarlet Blood Gold Ape expert was slapped across the face by Long Chen and swatted away like a housefly. This slap was too fast for them to even see it clearly. But that ancient race expert was already vomiting blood, all his teeth flying through the air. He slammed into one of the stone pillars. The stone pillar unleashed a blood-colored light that instantly blew him to bits. Not even his soul escaped. "Are you trying to be funny?" Even Long Chen was dumbfounded. What was going on? This arrogant Scarlet Blood Gold Ape expert was killed in one shot just like this? He almost found it hard to believe. This idiot really is unlucky. He actually slammed into the Sovereign Seal's stone pillar with such power. Of course, the Sovereign Blood Seal was going to kill him. Chang Hao was also speechless. This result caught him a bit off guard. Those two huge stone pillars were connected with the Sovereign Blood Seal. Just touching it wouldn't normally cause any problems. But if you used any force, it would be viewed as an attack and the Sovereign Blood Seal would automatically counterattack. The Sovereign Blood Seal wasn't something a weak foundation forging expert could endure. In fact, even a soul transformation expert would be instantly annihilated without the slightest hope of survival. The Scarlet Blood Gold Ape expert had been either too arrogant or too stupid. He had actually neglected to pay heed to his surroundings. Rather than saying Long Chen had killed him, it was more accurate to say the stone pillar had killed him. So his death truly was a bit ridiculous. After being killed, he didn't leave anything behind. Even his spatial ring had been turned to dust. But Long Chen didn't gain nothing. Another Heaven Dao fruit had appeared in the primal chaos space. But this time was different. Previously, when a celestial was killed, their core heavenly Dao energy would be sucked away by the primal chaos bead instantly. This time, Long Chen had clearly felt the Sovereign Blood Seal had fought with the primal chaos bead over some kind of energy. However, in front of the primal chaos bead, that suction force had been too weak. The seal could only allow this energy to be taken away. This was Long Chen's first time encountering such a thing. He couldn't help being shocked. What was going on? "Long Chen, let's go in," said Bao Buping. Seeing the entrance below the Sovereign Blood Seal, battle intent raged in his eyes. In the heaven-splitting battle sect, finding the heaven-splitting divine tablet was every disciple's most sacred mission. Even if they had to pay with their lives, they wouldn't frown. Even if they never found it, fighting for it was their glory. That was because the 9 forms of split the heavens were the lifeline of the heaven-splitting battle sect. In truth, Bao Buping, Chang Hao, and the other disciples didn't know that their heaven-earth divine pool had run out because of Long Chen. But even if Long Chen hadn't appeared, the heaven-splitting battle sect wouldn't have been able to survive for long. Right now, the heaven-splitting battle sect was already standing on the border of death. After reaching the Foundation Forging Realm, Bao Buping and Chang Hao had begged the old man to go to Devil Spirit Mountain countless times, but he had refused every time. In fact, once when the two had stealthily sneaked away, they had been immediately caught and fiercely beaten. Now that Long Chen arrived, they didn't know what the old man was thinking, but he suddenly permitted them to go. Seeing the entrance to Devil Spirit Mountain, they were impatient to search for the heaven-splitting divine tablet within. Long Chen looked around. He saw several wild cultivators looking at the entrance to Devil Spirit Mountain with conflicted expressions. They clearly hadn't made up their minds as to whether or not they wanted to step into this land of death. These wild cultivators all had low statuses and limited resources. After reaching the Foundation Forging Realm, or perhaps the Jade Core Realm, they no longer had any hope of advancing again. That was the only reason they would come to Devil Spirit Mountain. This was their final chance. Losing meant dying without a corpse. But if they could leave alive, they would definitely return with amazing gains. No matter what they brought out of Devil Spirit Mountain, it would benefit them for a lifetime. They had used their final savings to buy a supreme teleportation talisman. If they did manage to get out of Devil Spirit Mountain, they would immediately use this teleportation talisman to flee far away, so they didn't need to worry about anyone coveting their treasures. The ironic thing was that after Devil Spirit Mountain had started opening up to adventurers, the prices of these supreme teleportation talismans spiked, making the talisman cultivators rich. In the end, these people standing in front of Devil Spirit Mountain were unable to gather their courage to enter, resulting in them dithering over the entrance. The chances of dying once they entered were too high. No one laughed at them. In front of death, only a few people were able to act confident. Long Chen looked at the two of them surging with battle intent and shook his head. If they entered like this, they would definitely die. He pulled them to the side and gravely warned them, "The reason the old man allowed the three of us to come here is mostly because of me. So the two of you have to listen to me once we're in. We know. You're the one with the best head. We'll do as you say." Bao Buping and Chang Hao nodded. Ever since Long Chen had led them to defeat the 7 bosses, allowing their names to shake the entire sect, they and the rest of the heaven-splitting battle sect's disciples had started viewing him as a godlike existence. They would naturally listen to his orders. This was also something the old man had strictly ordered them to do before coming. But then before entering Devil Spirit Mountain, we'll need to talk to them first. Long Chen nodded and led them to the entrance. At this time, there were quite a few people struggling over their decisions. "Everyone, the 3 of us want to enter Devil Spirit Mountain. But there are some things I have to say first. Devil Spirit Mountain is filled with countless dangers, and the odds of death are shockingly high. Since everyone has come here, I know you've come here to gamble with your lives," began Long Chen. These people looked at Long Chen warily. The fact that he had killed a rank 8 celestial with a slap had shocked them all. Although they all knew it was actually the sovereign blood seal that had killed him, it was indisputable that Long Chen had slapped that powerful expert like he had been a child. His power was shocking enough for them to all listen carefully. "So I think that while we aren't allies, we can't count as enemies, so there's something I must tell you all. After we enter Devil Spirit Mountain for the next 6 hours, no one else is permitted to enter. If anyone wants to take advantage by following us, the 3 of us won't be merciful." Long Chen's gaze swept over them. Long Chen's meaning was obvious. After entering, he didn't want to be implicated by anyone else. If someone else caused a disturbance that drew out some terrifying existence, the 3 of them would be dead. So he first gave them a warning. If anyone really wanted to court death, Long Chen would definitely kill them. This was Devil Spirit Mountain, and he couldn't be the slightest bit careless. After saying this, Long Chen didn't give them any chance to declare their own positions. He led Chang Hao and Bao Buping to the entrance. He wasn't discussing this. He was warning them. Bao Buping and Chang Hao exchanged a glance. They had never thought about such details before. The 3 of them walked between the 2 stone pillars. The huge sovereign blood seal floated above their heads. Only once they were close did they truly sense just how terrifying it was. In front of this huge seal, they felt themselves to be insignificant ants. They were filled with reverence and shock. The energy accumulated within the sovereign blood seal was enough to exterminate this entire world. It possessed unimaginable power. The 3 of them were like 3 ants scuttling in front of this huge entrance. With the sovereign blood seal's pressure above them, they all felt like their hearts were going to rise out of their throats. Even with the guts of Chang Hao and Bao Buping, their faces were pale. Although they didn't sense any hostility from the sovereign blood seal, that kind of world-destroying power evoked terror in their souls. The stone pillars and the sovereign blood seal between them formed a huge gate. But at the bottom of this gate was a crack, a tear in space that was dozens of meters wide. 3 people now stood in front of this crack. "Let's go." The 3 of them exchanged a glance. Taking a deep breath, they stepped into the crack. The wild cultivators outside were deeply shaken to see the 3 of them walk in just like this. They were filled with admiration. According to reason, the heavenly geniuses of the various sects had limitless futures. They would soar like shooting stars. Their lives were incredibly valuable, but they hadn't even frowned before charging into one of the 7 danger zones. 6 hours from now, I want to be the next one to enter. I hope everyone will give me this face. One of the wild cultivators clenched his teeth. I will be the 3rd. Having been influenced by the 3 of them, these wild cultivators who had been unable to gather their courage finally decided to hesitate no longer. They had only come here because they had no hope for their futures, or because they had no choice but to put their lives on the line. Either way, seeing that the powerful heavenly geniuses were able to ignore death like this allowed them to resolve to go in. If even such valiant figures were willing to risk it, why did they need to be so reluctant? When Long Chen, Chang Hao, and Bao Buping entered the crack, they felt their bodies tighten. Space seemed to vaguely change. When they saw the scene around them, they sucked in a cold gasp of air. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.